Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. It's murder, sir. A scream, the sharp clatter of a dropped tea service, the sound of soft sobs, a rush of footsteps up the stairs, the sight of a dead body, and then silence. It's murder, sir, P.C. Connors spoke. DCI Whitcomb eyed the constable wearily, sighing inwardly. He was tired already, and they had just arrived at the scene of a particularly bloody crime. For future reference, if we ever come across the body of an old lady sitting at her writing desk with a knife through her neck, let's take it as read that it's murder, Connors. DCI Whitcomb sat in a chair and surveyed the room. Where is WPC Sanders? I need her eyes up here. Whitcomb muttered the last sentence under his breath. He was a man who appreciated a woman on the police force, for she would often have a point of view that he would never see. She was certainly good at her job. She took excellent photographs, a new thing in police work. She also did a fine job with fingerprints, although Whitcomb had reservations about their usefulness. WPC Sanders struggled through the door, laden with equipment. No one offered to assist her. She had learned not to ask. With brisk movements, she set up the equipment and started taking photographs. Whitcomb didn't need to be there for this, but he stayed anyway. Connors stood by the door, shifting from foot to foot. DC. Whitcomb sighed again, this time audibly. Connors, make yourself useful for once and gather the family downstairs, and make sure that blasted butler is there too. Whitcomb didn't like the fish-eyed butler at all. He looked suspicious. Why he looked suspicious was anyone's guess, but Whitcomb had taken an instant dislike to the man. Whitcomb poked around the old lady's room for a few minutes, taking mental notes and nodding his head a few times. Sanders carried on silently. She knew better than to interject her thoughts, but she also knew that she would be asked about her views on the case in due time. Satisfied, Whitcomb left the room, instructing Sanders to get a wriggle on and then meet him downstairs. Whitcomb tested the hallways and the stairs on his way down. Solid, every square inch. Anyone could creep about up here and not be heard, he mused. The old lady had 2 sons and 1 daughter, all of whom lived with their now deceased mother in the mansion. The 3 progeny were all sitting, and they seemed nervous to Whitcomb. Naturally, he thought. One of them is a killer. I need to interview all of you separately. Once I have finished, I will send you back in here. There is to be no conversing between yourselves until I have finished. P.C. Connors will be here to make sure that you abide by my directive. I say. One of the men stood up, a small frown on his face, and a rather large whiskey in his hand. The law, Whitcomb said severely, requires this, sir. The man sat down and said nothing more, but his face showed his displeasure. The woman scoffed, either at her brother's reaction or the DCI's statements. One just couldn't be sure. DCI Whitcomb pointed at the man who had stood up, gesturing for him to approach with the crook of his forefinger. You first, sir. The questioning went along normal, well-worn lines. Whitcomb saw no need to alter what had always worked. You found out where everyone was during the crime. You looked for corroboration, and you noted any strange behavior. The stories were distressingly similar. Not to put too fine a point on it, the stories were exact. Everyone was downstairs, eating breakfast, when the maid discovered the body. No one had seen their mother since 10 o'clock the night before. All retired to bed at roughly the same time, a little after midnight. The butler and the head housekeeper, a married couple who had worked for the murdered woman for over 30 years, retired to their rooms a little before midnight. All the door and windows had been shut and locked. DCI Whitcomb leaned back and sighed. He had had to deal with 2 murders in his 30-year career before this one, and they had been straightforward. The guilty parties had been easily nabbed, the evidence had been plentiful, and the convictions had been a foregone conclusion. He thought of the men who had been hanged because of his efforts. He could still see them swinging slightly from their final earthly judgment at the end of a rope. With a slight shudder, he returned to his task. "It's a nasty business, sir," PC Connors spoke up. Once again, he was standing in a doorway, shifting from foot to foot nervously. Whitcomb looked at him with some slight irritation. The man had a positive talent for stating the obvious. "Why don't you go get yourself a cuppa? See if the staff have anything to say about it all. Take your time, Connors. Maybe have a biscuit or two," Whitcomb said. The sarcasm in his voice was completely lost on Connors. Connors lost no time in doing so. The detective chief inspector made him nervous at the best of times, but on this case, he seemed positively put out. Besides, he was feeling a bit peckish and could do with a nice cup of tea and a bite to eat. "Well, he's good to have around when we need some muscle," WPC Sanders commented graciously. "Ha! And that's all he's good for." "Still, he's a good lad," Whitcomb said. Whitcomb winced at the thought of Connors becoming a detective chief inspector in the future. The man had no business running an investigation. WPC Sanders would be a far better candidate. But she was a woman, and she would not get the chance to advance beyond her current status. Whitcomb and Sanders went through the bedrooms of the siblings, and that of the butler and his wife as well, but success was limited. It would have been nice to find some bloody clothes tucked away somewhere. But this murderer wasn't as obliging as the other killers he had faced in his career. The evening was fast approaching on this October night. Soon the sun would disappear and the night would be cold. It might even snow, Whitcomb thought. While he didn't relish the thought of being stranded here, he also didn't want to leave and allow a killer to escape. Whitcomb had the butler make up a bedroom for him. The man blinked rapidly behind his glasses and hesitated slightly before nodding and doing as he was told. Suspicious, Whitcomb thought again. Whitcomb sent the other 2 home, instructing Sanders to develop the photographs and bring them back early in the morning. Connors was to fill the car's tank with petrol and make sure the vehicle was equipped to deal with a tire puncture. Connor may not be a great copper, but he was good with cars. As he settled in for the night, Whitcomb thought of the suspects. They all had motive, and he knew that one of them had to be the murderer. The butler and his wife knew more than they were letting on, but they were guilty of no bigger a crime than loyalty to the family. The kitchen staff and maids were tight-lipped as well, but Whitcomb was sure that they knew nothing of the murder of old Mrs. Ainsley. Even the gardeners and the handymen had precious little to say about it all, probably because they had nothing of import to tell. Whitcomb sighed and turned out the light. Whitcomb was up early the next morning, well before the 3 Ainsley siblings. He wandered into the kitchen to see about getting a cup of tea. He found Connors there, chatting amiably with the cook and the maids. They all quickly scraped back their chairs and stood up when Whitcomb entered. Whitcomb waved his hand, gesturing for them to all sit down. He gave Connors an appreciative nod of the head. The man was not lazy, he thought. WPC Sanders is in the library, sir. She has those photographs, Connors said. Whitcomb patted him on the shoulder and told him to carry on, by which he meant that Connors should continue to have a chat and a cuppa, staying out of Whitcomb's way. WPC Sanders did not stand when Whitcomb entered the library. She was studying the panoply of photographs that she had laid out across the ventral table in an impressively large library. Whitcomb was slightly stunned at the sheer size of the room and the thousands of books it contained. Rich folk, he mused, lived much differently than he did. "Good morning, Dad," Sanders said as she continued to scan the photographs. "I am DCI Whitcomb when we're working, young lady. I am your loving and generous dad when we are off duty. You would do well to remember that," Whitcomb said with some asperity. He loved his daughter, but he didn't like that she had to see such a gruesome sight yesterday. It made him testy. He didn't like having to tell his wife that their daughter had seen a dead body. It made him testy. He didn't like that his daughter had to go home and tell her husband that she had seen more blood than anyone should have to see. It made him testy. "Sorry, Dad. DCI Whitcomb, sir." Sanders looked up and grinned at her father and her superior at work. She was not above a little needling. "Enough with the pleasantries. What do you see in these pictures?" Sanders stood up and directed Whitcomb to a set of photographs near her. "You can see that the old lady was killed at the desk. No blood trail, just splatters and spray. Except in this one area, very little blood." "So," Whitcomb said. "So, the killer cut through the jugular and the blood spurted on him," Sanders said. "Or her." "I don't think it was a woman," Sanders said. "It takes some strength to get the knife completely through the neck." Whitcomb looked through the photographs and nodded. "Let's sit down, have some tea, and go through the evidence," Whitcomb said. "Righto, DCI Whitcomb, and maybe a biscuit. I'm famished," Sanders said. DC Connors was instructed not to interrupt the other two officers while they were locked away in the library. He was to continue the all-important work of chatting with the help. Connors nodded seriously and did as he was told. He was especially interested in chatting with the maid who had found old Mrs. Ainsley. She was young, pretty, and available. "Your thoughts," Whitcomb started. "William Ainsley, the eldest. He and his brother Rupert have a consulting business. Legal experts, they call themselves. They have a scrubby little office off of the high street, and they consult 2 times a week. They bring in less money than you pay me," Sanders said, grinning at her dad. "The Queen pays you," he said. "Right. South. They basically live off of their trust fund while living here for free." "The daughter?" "Estella. She was married for 20 years. Husband died in a motor accident 3 years ago. She also has a trust fund. She also lives here for free." "I have a feeling that the mother didn't want them here," Whitcomb said. "Probably true. Look at these photographs. The mother didn't have a picture of any of her kids, but she has several of her late husband. The kids all have a picture of their mother. It's the exact same picture. Someone had copies made of a photograph, stuck them in nice silver frames, and hey presto, job done. One of them is a murderer." "True. I plump for one of the boys, Dad. They have the muscle to carry it off. I'm not your dad right now. Also, whoever the killer is has bloody clothes to dispose of and a guilty conscience to assuage." Sanders nodded, then looked at her dad. She knew what was coming. "Did you ask them?" Whitcomb nodded. "And?" "William claims that Rupert had to have done it. Rupert swears that Estella has a murderous streak in her and that she did it. Estella knows in her heart that William is the type to kill the old lady. Convenient, Sanders said. Quite. So, we need to find some bloody clothes. Maybe try to get one of the staff to tell us more than they have so far, Sanders said. A voice spoke from the entrance to the library. I don't reckon you'll find any bloody clothes, or the killer. Sanders and Whitcomb looked up, surprised. Surprise turned to amazement. D.C. Connors strode into the library and sat down, looking at his comrades. Explain yourself, Connors, Whitcomb said severely. He didn't like that Connor had come into the library unawares, and he especially didn't like what Connors said. Connors plopped a book on the table, leaned forward, and spoke. I was questioning that maid what saw the body. Jenny, you see? Strolling through the garden. I saw you two lovebirds. Sanders poked at Connors. Like I says, Connors continued, unperturbed. I was asking her about this and that. Lovely girl. We're going to the cinema Sunday afternoon. That's her afternoon off. Connors. Be a good lad and act like a copper, Whitcomb said sternly. Right. So we get to talking about books. She has this cracking good book here, and she hands it to me. It's a murder mystery set on a train. The Oriental Express. The Orient Express, Sanders said, reading the title. That one, yeah. Anyway, what happened was, there's a murder on the train. Turns out all the people on the train had a hand in killing this bloke what killed a baby. This dandified detective figures it out. Frenchman, I think. Belgian, Whitcomb muttered. So there's the story. The book belongs to the family. Jenny tells me that all the kids read it. The butler, too. Okay, so we continue to walk. I find a burn pile near the gardener's cottages. I dig through it and find burnt clothes. I tell her I got to get back and tell you. So we start back. Well, soon as we leave, I spot a gardener stoking up that fire again. I rush back, but it's too late. Everything is ashes by now. Uh-huh. Continue, Whitcomb said softly. He had a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. Well, sir, then there's the lawyer chap. The what? The lawyer chappie for the old lady. The old lady called him on the blower and told him to step on down here on Wednesday. She wanted to substantially alternate her will. Alter. Yes, sir, that one. The kids all were there in the living room and they all heard the call to the lawyer chap. So did the butler. And then the kids all go to the library and shut the door. They're in there for a couple of hours. Which is strange, Jenny says, 'cause they don't really like each other all that much. South, that's that. Whitcomb and Sanders nodded, deep dejection on their faces. They were all in on it, including the help. Yes, sir. Jenny tells me the old lady was miserly and didn't pay them much at all, but the kids always gave them money to help them out. Jenny in on it too? Sanders asked. I reckon so, but I still like her. We're stepping out and don't try to stop me, Connors said determinedly. She's guilty of murder, Whitcomb said. I don't reckon she stuck the old lady, Connors said. She knows who did it, boy. I reckon I'm fine with that. I have to let you go then. I can't have a man on the force who knows wrongdoing and lets it go. Connors nodded. I'll work for my dad. Good money to be had in fixing automobiles. It all fit. Everyone colluded to kill the old lady. Everyone was guilty. Nothing, though, could be proven. The murderers were known, yet escaped the justice of the law. They did not escape karmic justice, however. Within a year, all of the siblings were dead. Both boys died from eating tainted fish paste. The woman fell down the stairs at the mansion and died of a broken neck. All of the deaths were suspicious, but nothing could be proven. Curiously, Jenny produced evidence in the form of letters from her father and her mother, a former scullery maid at the Ainsley residence, that showed she was the illegitimate daughter of the late Mr. Ainsley. These letters were produced a few days after the death of the last sibling. She inherited everything. Jenny and ex-PC Connors were married soon thereafter. DCY Whitcomb and WPC Sanders did not attend the wedding, of course. They did not care to consort with murderers, not in it for the money. I was a hacker for almost as long as I can remember. Even as a kid, I lived to mess around with computers, programming, writing and cracking codes, and surfing to the darkest edges of the internet. What I couldn't learn from manuals, chat rooms, message boards, or friends I pretty much just figured out on my own. So early on I knew that hacking would make me way more money than flipping burgers at Mickey D's, earning a college diploma, or even scoring a high-paying job on Wall Street, and with a lot less of the mess and stress that usually accompanies your average 9-to-5 gig. But it was never about money, and things have changed since then, which was why I'd retired. For obvious reasons, I can't tell you my name. And after you read this, you won't be able to trace it back to my IP address it was sent from, since I've developed and used a multi-level super encryption masking and scrubbing device to send this screed. So, why am I taking the risk of getting back into the game, stepping out of the shadows and into the grid by divulging this secret to the New York Times? Because of the way they've ruined it for all of us. I've had enough and just can't stomach it anymore. Who are they, you ask? In 2 words, today's hackers. These hackers today. They've no respect and are almost always in it only for the money. When I was in the hacking game, it was all about changing the world and making a difference. Sure, every now and then we'd line our own pockets a bit, with enough to cover expenses and then some. But for me, unlike them, it wasn't about the money. Maybe it's just the lone wolf versus mob mentality. Today's hackers are not only creating chaos, but they make no distinction of who it is directed toward. For them, there are no good or bad guys, only easy pickings. And because they do that, it reflects poorly upon our past and present hacker communities as a whole. It's their ransomware attacks that really piss off most of us legit hackers. Nowadays, the bigger their haul, the more likely these greed-fueled Robin Hoodish banditos will invest it in specialization and franchising. They've certainly gotten better at it over the years. Remember the Colonial Pipeline assault? It may have not been the most costly hack attack from 2021 to 2022. Only $4.4 million was made from that hack. But the downtime caused by lost business and revenue was far more financially damaging to them than the ransom size. The WannaCry virus was far bigger in the number of computers it infected, 300,000 plus, and resulted in $6 billion USD of damage, albeit the blackmail payout dollar size wasn't the top dollar in brides for that period. Well, I, for one, want to put a stop to it now. Here's a short list of today's greatest hacker hits. Coming in hot at number 1 for 2021 is the insurance company Can Financial Corp. For a whopping $40 million, which was a record liberation money amount paid up to that point. The second was meat producer JBS's payment of $11 million US, followed by GPS system manufacturer Garmin for $10 million, an unidentified Austrian organization, $4.7 million, CWT Global Travel Services, $4.5, Brenntag, a chemical distributor, $4.4, Travelex, $2.3, resulting in the corporation's declared bankruptcy. Fashion company Fat Face Ltd, $2.0, and then $1.14 million extorted from San Francisco's University of California. Do the math and tally it up. That's a grand total of nearly 85 million US dollars. As 2022 began, so did more digital assaults, beginning with the FlexBooker data breach on January 3rd. The Red Cross charity organization was the next innocent victim. Then came Crypto.com, multiple Credit Suisse banks, universities, hospitals, and even the Costa Rican government. Now, with nearly 36 other major thefts occurring thus far in a year, with still 3 months to go, it's really getting out of hand, isn't it? When today's hackers set their sights on specific ransom amounts, they normally take into account several factors. 1. The size of the infected network. 2. The target's overall net worth, including revenue and clients' accounts held in escrow. 3. The plane of data sensitivity being breached. And that's the way they do it. It not only hurts organizations and businesses out there that put good into the world, but even reputable hackers such as me. Therefore, this really has to stop. And there's only one way to paralyze today's hackers dead in their tracks, to halt them from fermenting further mischief. So, what's a respectable hacker of yesteryear ever to do these days? Basically, the way I'd decided to deal with it is not stooping to their level. That was up until the day when I had this idea. We, the good guy hackers of yesterday, need to band together and go after all the bad guy hackers of today to fight fire with fire. In other words, globally, the good must unite with one another to go after these nefarious computer criminals to hit them where it'll hurt the most. We hack the bad guys. I've been developing a unique virus that'll infect their devices and which would A, identify offenders so the rest of the world could detect them and out these blackmailers, B, temporarily lock down their software until the threat's resolved, and C, permanently disable and damage beyond repair any hardware used by chronic repeat offenders to stop them and wipe out their access to easy cash flow. With every day that's passed, I got closer to my goal, to halt and hurt today's malicious hackers. And now, I feel I may have cracked that code to allow me access via a back door in all computers that'll leave those greedy bastards defenseless. I'm almost there. And come tomorrow, my friends, sweet revenge. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator, I'm back, Marie Antoinette. Squat, beige and Soviet. The Marie Antoinette apartments stood against the stale gray Minneapolis sky. Irony of the worst kind, he thought, blandly ugly and unconscious. He would take exquisitely self-aware irony any day over this 3-story architectural monstrosity, classed up with tacked-on Ionic Greek columns, harsh blue LED Christmas lights wrapped inexpertly around them, canned Christmas classics pumping through the air. God, this place was only better than minimum security prison by a hair. But it was all he could afford now, so he'd just have to lower his eyes and his standards every time he approached. He tried to avoid the other people in the building, but a few of the near indigent souls, especially the family across the hall, insisted on pestering him with their lowbrow holiday cheer, the cheap gift of homemade cookies, the invitation of a seat at their dinner table on Christmas night on the flip side of a child's crude drawing of a Christmas tree slipped under his door. All this might have been more bearable if anyone he knew now understood why the Marie Antoinette apartments pained his soul, filled him with righteous rage. He'd certainly never get that from his obtuse, court-appointed therapist, a small, garish woman whose office and clothing reeked of TJ Maxx. So, he amused himself by using up their 50 minutes, complaining about how much he hated living there. His fingers itched to blow the place up, her told her, to set it alight. She told him there were healthier ways to channel and examine his negative emotions, so he could eventually let them go. He needed to think about what the Marie Antoinette represented to him, she told him, to look deeper and to perhaps think about its positive attributes instead. This made him laugh hysterically. How much deeper can I go than living inside the damned building? Should I dive into the meaning of my laminate, faux wood floors and formica kitchen counters, the rancid smell of old cooking that oozes from the graying, cracked walls studded with nail holes and abandoned archaeological remnants of tape from all the miserable souls who inhabited the purgatory before me? How about the rust-stained, leaking toilet and body oil-marked tub? Should I look for Rorschachs in its grimy patterns? That's not what I meant, she said quietly. And you know it. Well, I cherish my negative emotions, he said, suddenly tired. They're the only things keeping me going these days. Till near morning, a couple of weeks before Christmas, after one too many sleeping pills, he had a vivid dream. It started out of focus as he dragged himself toward the Marie Antoinette, bearing his usual cloak of heavy gray resignation, and pushed hard against the main door, as he always had to. Only this time, the door sprang open, and instead of jarring, cold Christmas music, warm strains of exquisite chamber music vibrated through him. All came into focus. The entryway had grown to twice its size, the gray, nondescript industrial carpet replaced with a glowing mahogany parquet floor. Instead of aluminum mailboxes and a frameless wall mirror on either side of the narrow space, giant gilt mirrors reflecting golden candlelight and gold and cream fleur-de-lis silk wallpaper covered the walls. The walls heaved outward until the room became what it wanted to be, a grand palace ballroom, complete with gently tinkling, candle-lit chandeliers. A ballroom for him alone. The effect was ostentatious, but stunning, the way his ex-wife had decorated their homes in the city, on the island, at the lake, near the slopes, their homes for every preposition, all gone now. He dream-prayed he had died and gone to heaven, but he awoke to the same ordinary life, the drab apartment, a shift at the same greasy job, and another boring session after it with his therapist, the only person he ever said more to than, "Can I take your order, would you like fries with that?" A woman he would have sneered at, if not ignored, in his old life, and would again someday when his luck turned. Would he tell her about his dream? He decided he would. It seemed safe enough, wasn't about the past, the present, or even the future. It was just a dream. But was it? As his workday dragged on, the customers who filed into the restaurant looked at him, smiling with something more, it seemed to him, than mere pre-Christmas cheer. He began to wonder if the dream wasn't a message. Maybe his luck was about to turn. He'd paid his dues after all. That old feeling began to tingle again. By the time his 4 o'clock appointment with TJ, as he'd taken to calling her, even to her face, arrived, he'd decided he must keep the dream to himself until he knew more. He had to get through the session, get home, eat a little something, and take his sleeping pills. "You seem distracted today," TJ said late in the hour. "Something happened this week?" Same old, same crappy job, same crappy apartment." He shifted his gaze to the pressed board, "Believe" plaque near the window before she could read him, but she was astute, this small, tacky woman. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw her cock her head. "You're not complaining like you usually do. Did something change?" Like I said, nope. Maybe I've adjusted to living in a shithole, I don't know. He attempted to give her an aw shucks grin, but felt his face contorting in weird ways, so he scrambled to throw her a bone. "Have I told you about my neighbors across the way?" He leaned back and sneered, coming up with an awful lie. "I'd swear to God she's killing him sometimes. And man, I wish she'd succeed so I can get some rest. What do you think it means, Doc, that I don't care if he dies? TJ sighed and drummed her red fingernails on her thigh. It's Clauso 450, she said. Let's just pick this up next week. Tilda. The dream started the same as before. Heavy quotidian dread as he approached the stunted building, growing excitement and wonder as it opened to a Versailles-like hall of mirrors. But this time, the hall was filled with people. Giant people. People twice his height, in silken 18th century finery, swirling and spinning around the room, wind-up dolls and white wigs with faces he recognized. His old clients, wealthy people he'd cheated and stolen from for years, people he'd fooled into being his friends, people from the life he wanted back desperately. He tried to speak, to get their attention, but nothing came, not even air. As he watched, the dancers grew larger. Wait, no, he grew smaller. He was shrinking, becoming more and more insignificant. An insect, a speck, dirt. He would always be dirt. Tilda. He stumbled through the rest of the week, his nights vast and dreamless. TJ seemed surprised to see him in the waiting room early but said nothing. He sat on her couch, cleared his throat. I had this dream, he said, that my building became a palace, but one I will never have access to again. His voice shook. She handed him the tissue box. Yes. He gave her a brief description of the dream. What do you think it means? She asked. Isn't that your job? No, she said simply, and crossed her arms, waiting. I guess. I don't think I'll ever again have the life I had before. I don't think, he said, swallowed. I deserve it. No, she said again, not clarifying what she meant, which oddly made him feel more respect for her. So, what now? That's up to you. Well, a hint might be nice, he whispered, wanting to scream. He swallowed. You are my damn therapist after all. Okay. What do you miss most about your old life? Not from in here. She tapped her head. Not ego. From here. She tapped her chest. Heart. What do you really miss? He shook his head. I don't know. Without those things on the table, nothing. I mean, I don't have kids. My ex-wife was a money-grubbing bitch, and my friends... Shit, I didn't really have those. Maybe luck. But that's not what you mean either. I know what you're getting at, but you're barking up the wrong tree. She smiled, the first full smile he'd seen from her since they'd met, before she'd gotten to know him. I don't think so. I think you're getting somewhere. Maybe your dream was telling you more than you think. Like I've said before, dig deeper, go further. The answers are there, inside that building and inside you. He choked back a snarky, whatever Obi-Wan, and nodded at her. Glancing at the clock above the door, he stood, smoothing his sweaty palms against his jeans. Hold on. She held up a finger and smiled again. I have something for you. He stared, not comprehending. She turned to fish something out of a paper bag, then turned back, holding out a flat package wrapped in green tissue paper and red curly ribbon. Of course, Christmas was only 4 days away. He stammered, cheeks reddening. I didn't get you anything. He didn't know why he was embarrassed, which only made him blush harder. She laughed. I was not expecting you to. Don't worry about it, it's no big deal. Merry Christmas. Merry, yeah, he said, looking down at his name. Jeb, in black marker on the paper, an inexpertly drawn holly leaf and berries below it. A feeling spread, not altogether unpleasant, replacing ungenerous thoughts about the cheesy gift she'd likely procured at TJ Maxx. Thank you, Geraldine. he mumbled and bumbled out the door. Tilda. He worked Christmas Eve day, took the bus, and trudged home as the sun set again too early, the day again too short, carrying his fast food dinner and a bottle of California Pinot Noir he'd splurged on. It was only 4, but it felt like midnight, and his near-unfurnished apartment felt more featureless and tired and depressing than prison ever had been. Because it was his choice to leave it so, he realized. He had nowhere else to go, so he busied himself with eating and drinking, the food cold and congealed, and the wine's mediocrity disappointing. Folding up the empty, redolent burger paper and fries box, he glanced at the present Geraldine had given him, still unopened on the kitchen counter. He wasn't sure whether he'd saved it because it was his only gift, or because he didn't really care about it. Either way, he might as well open it now. He washed his greasy hands in the kitchen sink and poured another glass of wine. He picked up the gift and carefully untied the red ribbon, did his best not to tear the green paper as he picked at the tape, then slid the paper away. Not a tacky nothing after all, but a green, leather-bound book, like the ones his ex-wife had bought by the shelf-load from antiquaries to decorate their homes, curated for color and size rather than content. But this wasn't inert decoration. It was chosen for him to read. He snorted. Crime and punishment. He knew the gist of the story, though he suspected he'd have to read it to get the nuances she intended. Funny, he found himself looking forward to it. His doorbell rang. Book in hand, still smiling with surprised respect for Geraldine. He answered the door to find the frazzled woman from across the hall. "Hi, Jeb, right?" Her grin was crooked, a little shy, infectious. He nodded, and she said, "Marissa, you never responded to our invite to dinner for tomorrow evening. Can you make it? We'd be glad to have you. We're making turkey with all the fixings. A couple other neighbors are coming." He considered this only a moment, tasting the oily coating of his pitiful dinner as he licked his lips. "You know what? Yes, Marissa. I'd be honored. Can I bring anything? Just yourself." She grinned again. 6 o'clock sharp, if that's okay, because of the Munchkin's early bedtime. "Sure," he said, finding himself grinning in response. 6. Great. She glanced at his book, then inside the doorway at his near-bare apartment. "Looks like a bookshelf is in order, huh? Maybe even a sofa." She laughed. He couldn't help but laugh with her. "Yes," he said. "It's time." Again, that soft, warm lightness pushing out something hard and heavy he hadn't even known was there. What was it? Only later, while lying on his second-hand mattress on the floor, after he'd read the long first part of the leather-bound book about young, impoverished Raskolnikov scheming and rationalizing his decision to murder a pawnbroker for her money, did it come to him. Like Raskolnikov, he'd lost something along the way, something essential and tender that had shriveled to a hard stone inside him once he began to drip Ponzi scheme money. Something poor little rich girl Marie Antoinette likely never knew her entire tragic gold-plated life. That night he dreamt again, a simple dream. The Marie Antoinette apartments remained an ugly pedestrian building, but he entered with lightness, that warmth down to his bones. He greeted neighbors in the lobby by name, delivered groceries to the housebound old lady down the hall, went into his simply but warmly furnished apartment to make himself a nourishing meal. Christmas morning, he leapt out of bed. If he was lucky, he might find gifts for the children across the hall before noon. To live a life posthumously. The casket was oak with a mahogany finish. A yellow cut sunflower lay haphazardly between the fingers of the body, the most color offered in the small, run-down church. Only 3 people entered the room. Only 3 took seats in the front aisle, chipped gas cans and matchboxes in hand. The uniformity of the black outfits made the room feel smaller, duller. The only respite was the small, almost seamless lines of dark gray thread interwoven into the fabric of each person's blazer. An imperfection, yes, but a consolation for him nonetheless. Each blazer told a different story: missed meals and burning anger, a car, a sunflower field, and unfortunate truths, old fortunes and new beginnings. That was what they were. Memories of a time when he lived, stories into the person he was. So as he watched the three effortlessly coat the aisle seats and checkered floors with oil, watched as the papers of his existence become pliant under the weight of the foreign substance, he thought back to a time when he simply was. The calm before the storm. It is bright and damp. A cold draft whistles through the broken roof of the rundown house. The only warmth apparent was from the overused patchwork blanket and the 2 sizes to big black blazer, the price tag still attached. Silas felt along the side of the stiff material, wincing at the tear already present from the rusted sharp metal of old Mac's wired fence. Damn it, my first big job, and I already made a mess. His father would not be happy. He got up and slipped down the stairs from the rickety attic, stopping shortly as he heard the hushed voices in the kitchen. He readied himself to flee before carefully peeking through the gap in the door. You said you would stop. You promised me you wouldn't steal or sell again, that when the kids were born, we would start fresh. Mama clenched the ladle in her hand, the remaining soup on it, slowly dripping onto the floor. Silas's stomach clenched at the wasted food. Mama never wasted food. Father seemed to realize this too, as his large shoulders seemed to shrink under his wife's eyes. The gun he was cleaning in his hands, less a threat compared to her ever-growing anger. We did. I have. But this time it was personal. He attacked this family's integrity. He questioned our worth. I had the money we could have paid, but he wouldn't let us. So we left, taking only what we rightly deserved. He attacked the gun with a new sense of purpose, the black residue coming off further, staining his stubby fingers, leaving the faint scars still visible on them to almost glow against his sunburnt skin. They both became still, the anger permeating the room colder, clearer. It felt like a line had been drawn, with one person on each side. It felt permanent. Then know this, Antonio. We have followed you around as you have shepherded us like sheep to the slaughter, purposefully ignorant. I wonder when we are dead and gone, if you will still try to talk of integrity. Silas's stomach clenched and rumbled. He wished he was somewhere else. What once was still is. It was windy and hot, the moon the only source of light. The leather shift grated against his hand as the car flew around the corner. Fuck, 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 the police were gaining. Damn it, Silas, push it! Creed's voice echoed around the car, his brother's patience waning. It felt like he was stuck underwater. Everything seemed to merge into one. His black blazer stuck to his skin as perspiration slowly fell down his neck. His fingers shook, and his pulse raced. Breathing felt hard. It was too hot. It was too sticky. It was too dark. Everything was just too much. Houses passed in a blur as they raced away from the inevitable. The sound of the siren receded and returned like waves upon the shore. They were coming to the end of the street. Beside them, hidden behind the buildings, was a field of sunflowers. Their brightness diminished due to the enveloping darkness. Ahead was a dusted-out dirt road where they would most certainly be arrested. Creed's tattooed fingers came into his line of view, his pointer extended to the side of Silas. Turn here, down this side street. Once you get to the end, drive straight into those flowers and cut the engine. The car lurched to the left, the wheels leaving the ground from the sudden turn before gravity took over, and Silas rammed the vehicle into the complying field and buried the flowers under the tracks of his tires. Silas turned sharply once more before turning off the ignition. A loud silence consumed the car as everything settled, the void only filled by the slight tapping sound of their boots and stuttering breaths. The siren passed, taking with it Silas's anxiety, but not his anger. He waited a few before speaking. I thought this was meant to be a small job. No cops, no competition, just a simple drop-off. He watched Creed pull at the tie around his throat, his ample fingers moving quickly and with purpose. It was. Dad knew that Anthony would pull one on him, so he asked me to switch the cargo before handing it over. Anything the cops find will come back to him, not us. Silas scoffed. So he told you but didn't bother to tell me. We could have been caught, or worse, we could have died. I have an econ paper due, and instead of doing that, I am wasting away in a car with someone who would rather have no future. The veins on Creed's head throbbed as his anger increased. No future? This family is your future. How many times do I have to tell you that? Ondiam vai, Ozotra's sagging. The sound of Creed's phone ringing stopped Silas from responding as he listened with bated breath to the sharply spoken conversation. The awkward silence rose as Creed finished his phone call, both boys now leaning on their slightly open doors, the cool breeze doing nothing to calm the blistering rage from their prior conversation. Dad said he will be here in 30. We've been asked to wait. Creed pocketed his phone, a scowl resting on his face. Silas looked at the sunflowers beside him, watching them sway and jitter like puppets on a string. Control or be controlled, as his father always said. It was a pity he wasn't the latter. He curled his fingers in feeling at the moon-shaped scars on his palm, forcing down the words he wished he could say, and closed his eyes. Yeah, I guess we wait. The end. The room was ablaze in orange and yellow, the snap of the fire against the brawny wood aisle seats and fabric curtains like the crescendo in a song, dramatic and loud. In all the abruptness and carnage, Silas felt at peace. Looking down at his body, hair slicked back, black blazer on, Silas felt he could finally move on. The slow opening of the doors drew his attention back as he watched the backs of his family exit the burning church. A small hand rested itself on his shoulder. Its voice was soft and almost overtaken by the symphony of sounds made by the flames. It is time. Silas took one final look at himself before turning and walking into the shadows. The bullet that Esther stopped. I shot Papa square in the heart, but he didn't die. That damn Bible he carried with him saved his life. I was considerable lucky that Papa had his axe at hand and that he kept it sharp. I picked it up. It was a heavy thing, so I swung with all my might and put it right through his head. Seeing his brains made me throw up. I moved away so it wouldn't get on Papa. That would be disrespectful. Papa was a big man. I couldn't bury him like that, so I started chopping off his arms and legs with the axe. I was down to the right leg when Sheriff Culverson showed up. Wouldn't you know it? He came to arrest Papa for stealing a couple of old Lady Renner's chickens. Papa didn't have to worry about that now. Hell, he didn't have to worry about the drought or where his next bottle had come from either. I reckon I did him a favor, saving him from all that worry. Sheriff Culverson looked at me and looked at Papa. I done threw up again, so the smell was something terrible in the vicinity. I looked at the sheriff. He was a-shaking his head and had a sad look on his face. I reckon he didn't want to take a 19-year-old girl to jail. Especially me, seeing as how I was his daughter's best friend. Maybe he'll let Cassie visit me in jail. The jailhouse only had the one cell. That door clanking behind me sounded like what Mama would call ominous. I kinda know what that means by the words around it. Corn-tex, I think they call it. I would know a lot more if Papa would have let me go to school. He said girls don't need school. They need to learn how to cook and to clean and to please their man. I'm damn good at cooking and cleaning, but I don't think I know how to please a man. Papa was a man and he was never pleased. Oh Lord, here comes the sheriff and another man. I seen him around. Mr. King. He's always all duded up and talking fancy and smiling and swinging his walking stick around. I sure would like to catch me a man like that. I bet he don't beat his women. Not much, anyway. He ain't smiling now. I reckon I'm in a heap of trouble. Well, Papa won't be slapping the tar out of me for my sins this time. Both men sat across the table from Esther. The sheriff had placed the gun that Esther had shot her dad with next to the Bible that had thwarted Esther's original plan. The metal gleamed in the harsh light of the room, sitting as silently as the three occupants. The ceiling fan squeaked quietly, not doing a very good job of cooling off the room. The open window allowed the sunlight to stream through, and a soft breeze brought a little relief from the heat, along with the scent of jasmine and dust. The harsh, unforgiving angles that the sun cast in the room matched Esther's mood. Esther reached for the wounded Bible. She wanted to feel the torn cover and open it up to inspect the damage. The sheriff pulled it towards him and opened it up before sliding it to Esther. The soft sigh of the Bible moving across the table sounded like the whisper of broken dreams. Notice anything? The sheriff leaned back and watched Esther closely. Esther inspected the Bible. The bullet had torn through a significant portion of the Old Testament. It had stopped at the book of Esther. Yes, sir. Esther stopped the bullet, I reckon. Mr. King smiled, though he didn't want to. The sheriff nodded his head and leaned forward. Don't you find that a little odd? Esther shook her head. That's your name, young lady. Mr. King spoke. His rich, resonant voice filled the room. Dust motes danced and the breeze quickened. Yes, sir. The men looked at each other impassively, but both were thinking the same thing. The girl was thick-headed. Mr. King pointed to Esther's face. Your dad do that? Her black eye and a swollen nose did all the testifying for her. Yes, sir. Told me I should have caught a man by now, and he weren't gonna feed no old maid much longer. He been drinking? Sheriff Culverson leaned back, crossing his arms. He already knew the answer. Yes, sir. Mama always says that Papa only drinks on days endin' with a Y. I reckon that's true. Esther played with her hair, twirling it between two fingers. She looked away from the men and gazed outside, lost in her own thoughts. So you decided to shoot him? Yes, sir. But the Bible stopped the bullet. Yes, sir. Mr. Kind leaned forward and stared at Esther, causing her to blush. That was when you decided to take the axe to his head? Esther stopped playing with her hair and sat still for a moment before answering. I suppose so. Papa would have killed me if I didn't kill him. You feared for your life? Mr. King continued to stare intently at Esther. Yes, sir. Mr. King abruptly stood up and shook the sheriff's hand. I have all I need. He left quickly, so quickly that it startled Esther. She looked at the retreating back and worried that she had offended such a gentleman. Am I going to get the chair? The sheriff stood slowly, as if it hurt him to do so. He closed his eyes for a moment before answering. His voice, when he spoke, was softer than Esther had ever heard it. Number, you'll get 25 years in the women's prison in San Antone. Minimum. Esther started counting on her fingers. You'll be about 44, Esther. Damn. I reckon I'll be too old to catch a man by that time. The sheriff felt his chest tighten just a little at those words. And Mama? How old'll she be? How old is she now? Esther paused, deep in thought. Says she was born in 1901. Then she'll be about 60. Esther nodded, standing and smoothing out her skirt. Reckon she'll take me back when I get out. The sheriff scratched his forehead and looked at the floor. I don't know, honey. I just don't know. Dusra. They're calling us heroes. The newspapers, that is. I suppose we are, but I don't know that I feel heroic. I do, however, feel a difference in me now that Papa's dead. Liberation would be the word. Papa would have hit me if I had ever used that word in front of him. Papa had been drinking, of course, and smacking Mama around. Cassie and I were hiding out in my room, wondering when it would all stop. At one point, I heard Mama scream. That's when I went out to investigate. Papa was pointing a gun at Mama. I didn't even think about what to do. I just did it. I stepped in front of Mama just as Papa shot. The bullet hit my Bible. Yes, I carried a Bible with me, right over my heart, but only when I was wearing overalls. It was fortunate that I was wearing them at this point. I staggered backward and fell. The impact of the bullet stunned me. Mama fell as well, trying to hold me up. That's when Cassie came charging out of the room and started to wrestle with Papa, trying to get the gun out of his hand. We heard another shot. Papa took a bullet to the gut. He died 2 hours later, in a lot of pain. Cassie stood and fairly sprinted out of the house. She came back a few minutes later with her dad, the sheriff. The look on his face was one that will not soon leave me. Pinched and drawn, with worry written clearly in the eyes. Mama should have never been home. She was supposed to go to San Antonio to see her sister, but Papa beat her so bad the night before that she refused to go. I believe that Papa beat her so severely so she wouldn't go. He was like that. Cassie shouldn't have been there either. Her father told her never to go to my house when my Papa was around, but Cassie often defied her father. Her father was so relieved that Cassie wasn't injured or killed that he never punished her. On the contrary, he hugged her tightly and kissed her on the cheek. I had never seen him do that before. I'm supposed to write a story for the newspapers. The one in San Antonio wants to give me, and Cassie, $50 each for our story. An astounding sum. Some rich people in San Antonio also want to give us full scholarships for college. Imagine going to college. It's in Denton, but that's even better. Cassie and I can get away from the blight of the hill country and experience a different kind of life. A different kind of life. I'm filled with a substantial happiness, and I wonder when it will leave. Never, I hope. The real hero is Mama, and I'll make sure the newspapers know that. All those years of insisting that I go to school, even when Papa beat her for her sass. He called it that anyway. It was grit and toughness and love. I'll call it the stuff that heroism is made of. That has a nice ring to it, and it's the truth. All 3 steps to the elevated porch squeaked under Mr. King's tread, though the man was not heavy. Like the rest of the porch area, they needed paint. Rusted nail heads poked out of the wood, loosened by years of neglect and hill country weather. The evening was soon to turn into dusk. Just spoke to the judge. Cassie ain't to be charged. He said she did us all a favor by shooting that man. Sheriff Culverson didn't show it, but a wave of relief flooded his body. He relaxed a little and felt his breath coming easier. Mr. King sat down and lit a cigar, offering one to the sheriff. Both men took some time to light their cigars, ensuring that they had a proper draw. This was not a task, but a ritual, and it was not to be taken lightly. The sheriff went inside his house and returned in a few moments, bearing a bottle of whiskey and 2 small tumblers. Each man filled their glass to the amount desired and sipped. Mr. King grimaced at the first sip, then took a second, larger sip. I reckon she did us all a favor, sure, but it was an accident. I'm damn happy the judge was of the same mind, the sheriff said. He took another sip of whiskey and sat his glass down, concentrating on puffing his cigar and enjoying the news. You know, I'm surprised one of those women hadn't killed the man before. He sure liked to beat his women, Mr. King said. The mama, the sheriff said. Mr. King turned his head slightly. Pardon? The mama. She made that girl, Esther, get an education. I hear she took a beating or 2 for her daughter. Damn fine woman, in my opinion. Mr. King nodded and smiled. He had already heard the news. You went to visit the widow, I hear. The sheriff glanced at Mr. King and then quickly glanced away. Offer my condolences in an official capacity. The sun had disappeared behind the horizon, bestowing faint light and beautiful colors to the sky. Fireflies came out of hiding, their pinpricks of light giving the large front lawn a magical appearance, as if fairies were in attendance, as if a miracle had been bestowed. You were there for 2 hours, Sheriff. That's a lot of, condoling. The sheriff turned and stared at Mr. King, his steely blue eyes narrowing a little. Mr. King laughed and hastened to explain. The old biddies in town, you know what they're like. Most of them had you and the widow making a baby during your visit. Vicious old cats, the sheriff spat out the words. Makes sense, though. You and the widow. Esther and Cassie are best friends. They'd be tickled pink to become sisters, so to speak. And the widow's a fine, strong woman. You done have us at the altar. Mr. King tamped the ashes from his cigar onto the porch and scuffed them with his boots. He poured himself more whiskey and watched the fireflies perform their chaotic, beautiful dance. Your wife's been gone for 12 years. I reckon you grieved enough, Sheriff. I figure the widow's grieving was non-existent. Can't really miss a man that beats you, can you? The sheriff poured himself another 3 fingers of whiskey and stood at the railing beside Mr. King. He sighed and turned to Mr. King, handing him a dollar bill. I'm hiring you for a 2-minute consultation, Mr. King. Mr. King looked at the bill and put it in his breast pocket. What's on your mind, Sheriff? The sheriff paused for a moment, trying to get the words out of his mouth. I heard Esther and Cassie talking one day last year, just before Christmas. Esther was telling her that she wanted to shoot her daddy dead so he'd stop beating her mama. Well, that froze me. Mr. King looked at the sheriff, a thoughtful expression creasing his face and pursing his lips. I figure she would have done it one day, Sheriff. I guess Cassie took care of that, though. The sheriff sighed. I reckon. So why the dollar? We got attorney-client confidentiality now, right? Mr. King laughed, nodding his head. Yes, very clever, Sheriff, but I wasn't going to divulge that little piece of information anyway. I expect a receipt when you get to the office tomorrow. Yes, of course. Come by after work, Sheriff, and I'll buy us a couple of beers. I seem to have an extra $1 in my pocket. The night darkened and the breeze stilled. Even the fireflies slowed down. Soon they were gone, letting the darkness of the night have its way. Both men remained silent. Cigar smoke curled and drifted upwards past the porch lights, disappearing into the blackness. Mr. King left after finishing his whiskey. "See you tomorrow, Sheriff, and I'll expect a wedding invitation." "I want that receipt, young man." The rest of the night passed as it should have. Frogs croaked lazily, crickets chirped, and lights winked out one by one across the countryside. 2 young ladies were dreaming of adventures at college. One sheriff was thinking of matrimony, and one widow was contemplating the mysteries of fate and providence. The Bible with a bullet hole in it was, in due time, returned to its rightful owner. The whereabouts of the mangled Word of God is currently unknown, masterpiece of malice. In the bowels of a towering skyscraper that touched the clouds, in a room devoid of natural light, sat Japheth, a man whose fingers danced over the keyboard like a pianist lost in the throes of a concerto. With a pair of silver-framed glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, Japheth peered into the bright screen before him. Surrounding him were his colleagues, collectively known as the Warriors, each a genius in their own right, defending a massive financial empire from the dark underbelly of the digital world. The company they worked for managed the assets and transactions of millions, safeguarding the economic backbone of numerous nations. This was a responsibility the Warriors did not take lightly. Yet, for all their collective brilliance, none were quite like Japheth. He had an artist's soul, finding beauty in the complex interweaving of code lines, seeing symphonies in the arrangement of algorithms. To him, code was not just functional, it was beautiful. On a particularly quiet afternoon, as the Warriors went about their business, something caught Japheth's eye, a flicker in a subsystem that shouldn't flicker, a minuscule anomaly in the vast web of data traffic that flowed through the servers. He paused, adjusting his glasses, his fingers momentarily frozen above the keys. Then, with a flurry of keystrokes, he isolated the section of code responsible for the irregularity. His eyes widened. The code was ingenious, an awe-inspiring masterpiece of layered algorithms, cryptographic obfuscations, and data manipulations. Yet, it was malicious, designed to siphon off minute fractions of transactions, accumulating them into an offshore account. It was as beautiful as it was dangerous, a digital dragon hiding in the complex labyrinth of financial transactions. Japheth should have felt outrage, maybe even a surge of warrior-like adrenaline to slay this dragon. But he felt none of that. Instead, he felt a pang of admiration. Could one admire the craftsmanship of a weapon designed for harm? "Everything okay, Japheth?" asked Alara, one of the Warriors and the team's cryptography expert. She had an intuitive sense when something was amiss. "I've found something," he said cautiously. "Something extraordinary, but malevolent." Alara rolled her chair over to Japheth's terminal and scanned the displayed code. Her eyes narrowed. "This is the most advanced piece of malware I've ever seen. It's beautiful." "That's just it," Japheth replied. "It's too beautiful to simply exterminate. This code, the dragon, let's call it, is like a rare species discovered in the wild. It's incredible, Alara. It feels wrong to simply destroy it." She looked at him, understanding the conflict that stirred in his soul. "Japheth, it's stealing from people." I know. He cut her off. "I'm not saying we let it continue. I'm saying, can we convert it? Use its elegance for something good?" Alara sighed. "That's risky, and you know it. Besides, we'd need to trace it back to its source. figure out its origin. Japheth looked back at the screen, contemplating. The dragon had probably accumulated a small fortune by now, sitting in an account somewhere, untouchable. In an odd way, the dragon was the epitome of the greed and avarice their financial institution sometimes perpetuated. Could they use it as a force for good? Suddenly, an idea dawned on him. What if they could repurpose the dragon to serve the public good, while catching the original creator red-handed? What if they could turn this artwork of maliciousness into a masterpiece of justice? The dragon was a dilemma, a moral and aesthetic quandary. It was the epitome of what Japheth loved and loathed about his work. Beautiful code used for ugly deeds. He looked at Alara, resolve solidifying in his eyes. We have to try. If we don't, we're just as bad as the person who created it. She met his gaze and nodded. All right, let's cage the dragon and see if we can turn it into a guardian angel. As Japheth's fingers returned to the keyboard, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was a warrior, yes, but also a coder, an artist at heart. And artists don't destroy art, they transform it. He began the arduous process of dissecting the dragon, peeling back layers of code as if they were scales, seeking to understand its fiery breath and its majestic wings. As his fingers wove new commands into the old algorithms, Japheth felt as if he were part of something larger, a symphony of chaos and harmony, code and conscience. It was a delicate task, full of risks and unknowns. But if it worked, they would not only have thwarted one of the most sophisticated financial crimes in history, but they would have also transformed a weapon of greed into a tool of justice. The dragon's fate now lay in Japheth's hands, poised between destruction and redemption, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like a true warrior, armed not just with skill, but with the moral fiber that transformed mere code into something profoundly, deeply human. Japheth spent days in a complex dance with the dragon. His screen was a blur of recoded algorithms, tested and retested to ensure they did exactly what he intended. He had convinced the warriors and even upper management to allow him the time to train the dragon, to harness its code for something beneficial. With each keystroke, he refocused the dragon's intent, directing it to identify vulnerabilities within their own systems, gaps that other malicious entities could exploit. It would be a guardian angel, albeit one birthed from malevolent genius. Alara was beside him every step of the way, providing the cryptographic lock that would contain the dragon and ensure its transformed code could only be used for their defined purposes. Finally, after endless cups of coffee and sleepless nights, they had done it. The dragon was tamed, its complexity now a force for good, patrolling the data corridors and alerting them to the weakest links. It was the network's newfound guardian, designed to protect rather than plunder. Still, there was the matter of the dragon's creator. Despite their efforts to trace back the malware's steps, the person behind it remained elusive, a ghost in the machine. Funds that were diverted remained in limbo, untraceable and untouchable, hidden away through a complex web of cryptocurrency transactions and offshore accounts. Whoever had made this was not only skilled, but exceedingly careful. They left no trace, no signature, nothing that gave away their identity. I can't believe we can't find him, Alara said, frustration lacing her words as they looked at the final report. The dragon was a piece of genius, but it's as if it sprang into existence out of nowhere. Japheth nodded, equally puzzled and annoyed. He wanted to meet the person who could conceive such a masterpiece, understand what drove them to use such brilliance for nefarious purposes. Some artists prefer anonymity, their work speaking for them, he mused. Yeah, but this is one artist who deserves to be behind bars, Ilara added. Weeks passed, and the transformed dragon proved invaluable. It flagged 3 potential vulnerabilities within the first month, each of which could have led to catastrophic breaches. It was a win for the warriors, and yet, a sense of incompleteness nagged at Japheth. Then one day, as he sifted through flagged data, he saw it. A message hidden deep within layers of encryption, appearing as an anomaly within an anomaly. It was the equivalent of a digital whisper, something so subtle it could easily be overlooked. But it wasn't overlooked, not by Japheth. The message read, "A dragon's nature is to be free. Yet, you've caged it, transformed it. Interesting. It's not often one finds a worthy opponent." Japheth felt a shiver run down his spine. The creator knew. He wanted to reply, to communicate with this enigmatic entity. But as quickly as the message had appeared, it was gone, swallowed up by the digital ether. A one-time anomaly that their systems could not trace. "He knows we changed it," Japheth said to Ilara, recounting the discovery. "And he respects it in his own twisted way." "Or he's mocking us because we couldn't catch him," she countered. "Maybe it's both," Japheth mused. The dragon's creator remained elusive, but his creation now served a noble purpose. Japheth often wondered if they would ever cross paths again, in some future dance of code and intent. He took off his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose, pondering the complexities of human nature and the even more complex realm of ethical code. They had won a battle, but not the war. The dragon was tamed, but its creator still lurked in the shadows of cyberspace. As he looked at his screen, at the elegant lines of code that now served to protect rather than harm, Japheth felt both accomplishment and a strange sense of gratitude. For it was in the depths of the dragon's malevolent beauty that he found an opponent worthy of his skill, a complex riddle to solve, and, most importantly, a way to transform something harmful into something good. His eyes moved to the flickering cursor, an ever-present reminder that every end is also a beginning. The world of code was vast and filled with both demons and angels, but for now, the dragon was one of the angels. And so, in the company of warriors, with the shadow of an elusive adversary stretching from some unknown corner of the internet, Japheth continued to seek the beauty in code, forever vigilant, forever in awe of the dual nature of his digital world. Not Mary. The unnerving chorus of cutlery scraping porcelain echoed throughout the room. Tension hung thick in the air, palpable enough to reach up and slice into it with my steak knife. Beside me, my sister sniffed. From my periphery, I could see her red-rimmed eyes staring blankly at her untouched plate. I cut into the slab before me, crimson juices forming a greasy puddle. I took a bite, relished the tenderness. The peas encroached into the sea of mashed potatoes like invading soldiers. "Would you please pass the potatoes, Mary?" Mother asked from the other end of the table. I nodded, heaving the dish over to my sister to pass on. Her gaze remained fixed on her plate as she sat on both hands, legs trembling. A small, choked sob escaped from her lips. "That's quite enough, Leah," Father growled, stabbing into his own steak. Leah shakily grasped the bowl, ushering it to Mother. Between them sat Jonah, barely peeking over the edge of the table and pushing his food about. At the tender age of 5, he was blissfully ignorant. I chewed a bit of gristle in the next bite, watching Father's brow furrow as he took a sip of wine, a rogue tendril staining his snowy beard burgundy. He cleared his throat, an action which rendered the table still, waiting with bated breath. Children, the ultimate test is almost upon us. I hated the way he spoke, like that of an old novel. Mother rested a bony hand over his and listened intently. With her other hand, she fingered the gold cross hanging from her neck. We will not let the enemy destroy our union. We will not succumb to their devilish tendencies, for they are blind to the ways in which we serve him. They will never know such unwavering love and loyalty, and for that, I pity them. Mother nodded in understanding, her silvery bun bobbing. Father tossed his napkin over his plate and stood, chair screeching dully on concrete. We watched as he climbed the nearby staircase. Stray spots of maroon that had earlier leached into the wood marked his steps, evidence of what he'd done to protect the sanctity of his family. There was once a time when I would have chased after him, lunging for the open door, yearning for sunlight, but the scar on the back of my head itched like an ugly deterrent. I made it a point to constantly remind myself of who I was, where I came from. Fragments of memories, the way my mother used to rub my back in the morning when she woke me for school, the sound of my father's work shoes on the hardwood floors every evening, the hum of the fish tank in my childhood bedroom remained filed away in the depths of my mind, growing fuzzier with each passing day. But I dared not speak of these memories. They were mine and only mine. Leah, now gangly and naive in the throes of adolescence, was more pliable. I imagined she couldn't even recall things like the details of her mother's face or the way it felt to ride a school bus. When mother and father told her something, she accepted it at face value. And Jonah, in all his cherubic innocence, had never known another life. The harsh fluorescents were his sun and moon, every day the same. Sometimes it made me want to weep, but then I reminded myself he knew no different. Perhaps it was better that way. Father's thunderous descent broke my thoughts. Mother stood at his approach, collecting some of the equipment he came bearing. As he laid a piece before each of us, the breath caught in my throat. My eyes followed the transition from dark metal into laminated wood that led down to an unmistakable component, a trigger. Out of the children, only I knew how to operate a gun. When I was 8 years old, my father took me hunting for the first time. I recalled the way the cold seeped into my fingers and toes as we waited for hours. We flinched at any flicker of movement, which often turned out to be a rummaging squirrel. But then he arrived. Statuesque and bristled, his sinewy figure strutted into the open field, unaware of his armed audience. His antlers were a thorny crown that dipped with him as he scoured the earth. "Take the shot," my father egged, helping me hold the heavy rifle. We'd gone over the process an umpteen amount of times, but now the steely grip felt wrong. I dropped my shoulder, finger slipping from the trigger, as the barrel slung towards the ceiling of the tree stand, and my father cursed. That was the first time my father swore in front of me. In one swift motion, he grabbed the gun, took aim, and fired. I covered my ears and watched in silent horror as the creature's body quivered with the impact. His legs buckled, and he scrambled for a brief moment before taking off, blood spilling from his flank. My father took my shoulders in his hands and kneeled square before me. "You don't ever let the gun drop like that, especially with the safety off," he scolded. Hot tears coursed down my cheeks, stinging the wind-chapped skin. My father profusely apologized for swearing and raising his voice, wrapping me in a hug. But I wasn't crying because he yelled. I kept replaying the look of sheer panic as the bullet ripped through the deer's flesh, the terror and confusion he must have felt. We trailed our victim for a short while, following the blood-stained leaves of early winter. He didn't make it far, having collapsed in a small clearing. Panting laboriously, his onyx eyes stared up in blank defeat, and I saw myself in their reflection. Before I could process the scene, another shot rang out, and the deer stilled. A kill shot, my father explained, to end his suffering. When you see the enemy, you take the shot, Father said then, breaking my trance. I was back in my chair, staring down at the weapon before me. Leah ran a trembling finger over the safety, ensuring it was on per Father's crash course. Jonah, too small to wield such a device, was given a knife instead. Never before had we been permitted to use any kind of weaponry. Anything more than a butter knife was forbidden. Father and Mother claimed it was for our own safety, but I knew better. And that didn't stop me from fantasizing a ballpoint pen embedded in a windpipe, a broken bedpost as a club to the head. I'd had my fair share of time to ponder the possibilities. Leah and Jonah may have been taken at malleable ages, but I refused to fully yield. The slight quiver in Father's hands and the way Mother's complexion paled meant it was all hands on deck. Though I didn't know whose blood painted the staircase, sticky on the soles of Father's shoes, it had led us to such a cataclysm that I dared to dream about life beyond the concrete. I yearned to return to a world where my name was my own, not the one I'd been forced to adopt. I longed to hug my mother and father, to bask in the sunlight on a summer day, to see my friends, to witness the light at the end of a nearly decade-long tunnel. Could this be the end? The gunmetal was cool in my clammy palms. I contemplated aiming it at Father or at Mother. It would be so easy. But what if it wasn't loaded? What if it was just for show? And could I really do it? "Let us go," Father commanded, leading our ragtag troop up the stairs. At the top, Father unlatched the door, leading us into an empty hall with another door at its opposing end. Bringing up the rear, I glanced back into the abyss where time passed indefinitely. And as the next door opened into a moonlit room, I realized I would never allow myself to return. Gilded crosses glinted from every wall as we wound through the house, and like something from a movie, a muffled voice seeped in through the cracks in the windows and doors. "Come out with your hands up." "Father," Leah croaked. "Who is that?" Father ignored her, the click of his safety flipping off. He slung the gun around his back, nodding at Mother as he approached the door. The rush of blood thrummed in my ears. Leah mimicked Father and switched her safety off, and Mother did the same. Greasy coils of nausea knotted my gut as I followed their lead. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. Nothing about the unfolding situation felt good or right or godly. Father gripped the doorknob with a fierceness and turned. Golden porch light flooded the entryway. For a moment, Father's face looked younger in the warm glow, and I wondered what led him to this path in life. Slowly, he raised his hands above his head and stepped outside. "Drop your weapon!" an extraneous voice shouted. "It's over, Arthur," another called. "Do the right thing and drop your weapon." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Father replied simply, as if he were declining an invitation to a party. "Your godlessness is a stain on this earth, and I have to protect my family from such evil. I can't let you destroy the Lord's work. You think you can interfere with his plan?" Disconcerted grumbles echoed as a reply. "Dear?" Father called. Mother, gun cradled in her arms, crept to his side. Her skin was sallow, brow damp with prickles of sweat. The woman, always so composed, seemed to be cracking. "Mrs. Goodfellow, drop your weapon now," the second voice commanded. Tensions heightened with each passing second. "Put down your weapon and put your hands up." Negotiations persisted, but I knew Mother was as stubborn as a mule and loyal as a dog. She would follow Father to the ends of the earth. The crunch of boots on gravel drew near. Father stiffened. "Not another step," he threatened, raising his gun. "Don't turn this into a standoff, Arthur," the voice urged. "That's not going to do either of us any good." A treacherous moment of silence ticked by. Every part of me trembled. "I will not let you tear this family apart," Father declared coldly. "Maud," he said, nodding at Mother, who lifted her gun. Her finger made contact with the trigger, and she pulled. A deafening blast ripped through the cool night air, and all hell broke loose. Shouts of anger and bewilderment erupted, and I watched as Mother's body lurched back in a swarm of bullets. In collapsing, her gun fired. I fell to the floor, covering the important parts of myself. Father crawled lamely over the threshold, dragging Mother's body with him. With a weak kick, he shut and locked the door. Blood from their matching wounds seeped into the floor, a crimson trail smeared behind them. Amidst the chaos, Father tenderly brushed stray hairs from Mother's face. He caressed her cheek in his calloused hand as she gasped for air, her blouse soaked through and the cross dangling from her neck now stained. Faint whispers of prayer spilled from his lips as he continued to comfort Mother. Barked orders swirled beyond the window panes, the thud of boots heavy on the porch. From the floor, I glanced around. Jonah was nowhere to be found. "Jonah?" I called quietly. "Leah, Jonah's not." I turned. Leah lay face down nearby, arms splayed by her sides and gun resting under the nearby sofa. "Leah?" On shaking limbs, I clawed my way over to her. Terror gripped my throat so viciously I struggled to breathe. Thick locks of brunette cascaded into the floor, shielding her face from view. I carefully grabbed her shoulder, rolling her over. A strangled cry escaped me as I recoiled at the sight. Blood trickled from her forehead down the bridge of her nose between lifeless eyes. The bile that earlier threatened to purge itself did so then. I wiped my mouth, one last dry heave racking my body, before curling up beside Leah. Garbled whispers across the room caught my attention, and I looked to see Father lying beside Mother, gazing up at the ceiling of the foyer. Though worse for wear, he still managed to recite the Lord's Prayer unfalteringly. Mother remained limp, devoid of life. "Mary?" Father called blindly, like a sick game of Marco Polo. "Mary, child, are you still there?" I rose, stepping gingerly until I stood over top of him. His snowy beard, once stained with wine, was now marred with fatal streaks of maroon. "She's dead," I said solemnly. "Leah's dead." I didn't want to reveal that Mother's gun misfiring was the cause. I wanted him to think it was his fault, which, truthfully, it was. Everything was his fault. Sometimes, we as servants of the Lord must make the ultimate sacrifice. "Shut up," I hissed, jabbing the barrel of my gun into his forehead. Father grew silent for a moment. "Mary, you are a daughter of the one true King," he rasped. "You are our last hope at ending the war of evil that has been waged against us. When you see the enemy, take the shot." I sniffed. "You're right, Father." His breathing was ragged, blood curdling in his lungs as we spoke. A twinge of sorrow panged my heart as I gazed down at the dying man before me. But then I remembered all the hurt he'd inflicted, all the years he'd stolen, and anger sizzled in my veins. Realization flashed across his face. "Mary." A single blast rang out, a kill shot to end his suffering. The footsteps and chatter outside ceased. For a moment, the world was silent. "My name's not Mary," I spat, dropping the gun. With a quick yank, I tore the gold cross from my neck, dropping it onto Father's still chest. A muffled cry emanated from somewhere close by. My heart clenched. "Jonah?" I called, wheeling around in search of the noise. I padded across the living room to the pantry where the cries seemed to stem from. Carefully, I turned the knob and opened the door. Head buried between his knees, Jonah sat curled in a ball. Jonah. I rubbed his back, and he glanced up. His eyes shone with tears. "Jonah, it's okay. I'm here." Just as the front door splintered open under the crack of a boot, I wrapped him in a hug. Faw family feud. Local missing children discovered in police raid after officer slain. Abducted children found in home of local religious leaders. My name's not Mary. Young woman's fight for survival in House of Horrors. Diary of a serial killer. How might one endure the silent and secluded nature of winter? Be the bear, enter a deep cave, and dream, dream, dream. Jacqueline Suskin. I probably shouldn't be writing this, but oh fucking well. When the most precious thing lodged in your heart is ripped out and crushed by an unthinking alcoholic asshole driving with a revoked license, you do things. Unimaginable things. And not just burying your beloved 8-year-old son, which was not on my shitty life bingo card, OBVs. But life wasn't shitty before. The word should be capitalized. Before. No, better yet, the before. Because now, life was rent in two, forever separated by the gaping maw of rage. The before and the after. A fissure of overwhelming grief that quickly cracked, allowing the steaming, boiling lava to emerge from her core. Oh, he would pay. That drunken dickhead. His money won't protect him. Not from me. They gave her the codename Mama Bear, but he never imagined that she was holed up in a cave. On a hunch, he came out to the Pennsylvania woods at night, alone. Common sense, and the FBI handbook, would label his actions reckless at best and suicidal at worst. But he didn't fear for his safety. Mama Bear targeted a certain type of prey. Except for being a male, he didn't fit her profile. Funny, they were both profilers. October snuck up behind him, picking up the crisp air, tossing it around. Playing offense, it switched tactics, threw it toward his face, temporarily snatching his breath. He continued to climb, quiet, crunching under his boots, allowing the patches of clearing and the light of the frosted full moon to guide his steps. He'd reach the cave no matter what, so the easy way was the best way. He put his hand in his front pocket, felt the crumpled page of a diary. The paper crinkled like the fallen leaves underfoot. It was mailed to him at his office. This one, and the other entries. He had the sense to turn in the others, but not this one. Well, most of the others. She vowed to herself that she would abstain from killing for a month, or so she wrote. By his accounts, it was day 30. He hoped her undated entry referred to October. At least he would have a day. One day. It was easier than I thought. I would say too easy. But that motherfucker mowed down my baby like a shirtless, beer-bellied jagoff, hurrying to cut the grass before the Buccos game. Maybe it shouldn't be hard. Justice shouldn't be hard. Not in the semblance of a fair world. Leaves skittered and scurried around his legs, tumbling over each other like playing squirrels. He stopped, inhaled deeply. He loved the smell of fall, that last exhale of trees mixing with ripe decomposition. I'm so glad I live in a world of Octobers. He smiled at the memory of his sister quoting Anne Shirley, not so long ago. His smile fell. Not so long ago, yet forever ago. Tragedy has a way of altering time, elongating some parts and compressing others. He looked up through the lattice of bare limbs, a web of gnarled fingers, the indigo sky stitched with rhinestones. Did the stars foretell it? It was the mutable signs of the zodiac: Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, BTK, Dahmer, Bundy, the ones born at the end of a season, not in the middle, like the fixed signs, like Scorpio, like her. You'd think one was enough, but it wasn't. I realized AA was just one of many. Sure, I settled my score, but what of the other moms? South many, blights, diseases walking the earth, infecting others with their cruelty, their carelessness, their capriciousness. Someone had to bring order, just like Melville Dewey did to book classification. 000 to 999. He considered turning around to walk back down the hill. He turned, but didn't move. In the distance, the twinkling lights of downtown Pittsburgh weaved a terrestrial constellation of bridges, one-way traffic, and sundry skyscrapers. The Steel City, just like its people, metal backbones, gritty guts, and honest hearts. He craved a sandwich from Primanti's. Any sandwich. That was the last time he saw her. At Primanti's, the original one. He wasn't one to second-guess himself. His mom drummed it into their heads from the cradle. Trust self first, last, and only. First, last, only. Thanks to the internet and social media, it's not hard to find someone, or their misdeeds. What was once relegated to a diary like this is now vomited onto Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for all to see. Many lap it up, probably because it makes them feel less uncomfortable about their own stupid decisions and meaningless lives. Here for the mindless braggart, many blowhards make for less research when it comes to this side gig. He cracked his neck, onward and upward, one foot in front of the other, crunching leaves, whipping wind, snapping twigs. Up, up, up he climbed. He was getting close. His hand reached towards his front pocket. Again. He read the page dozens of times, just like the rest. He couldn't help it. Just touching the decal-edged diary page brought clarity and understanding. He had to find her first. Could it be that easy? I think this might be my last entry. I knew it was a bad idea. No, make that bad idea, to write things down. But writers write. Fish swim. Birds fly. Dogs bark. Writers write. And mama bears? Well, unless you're bent from birth, looking at you, mutable signs, no one sets out to be a killer. Or, as I like to differentiate, a remover. Scrooge, or Dickens, had it partly right. Decrease the surplus population. He just needed to add of assholes. Decrease the surplus population of assholes. Dangerous, foul, hollow assholes. He neared the ridge. He was getting close. He pulled out the wrinkled diary page. He couldn't help it. The moon illuminated the page, but he couldn't make out the words. Strange glyphs, occultic squiggles, just like those found on the astrological charts she used to interpret. Meaningless symbols to the untrained eye, but metaphysical gold to the mystic. He didn't need to be able to read the entry. He had it memorized. The cave. He could see the entrance. Dark, yawning. An inky maw, just like her rage. He reached into the other pocket for his flashlight. She beat him to it. Her flashlight shone on the ground ahead so as not to blind him. "Hey, sis." "Hey, bro. What took you so long?" The Last Supper. Surprise party. Murder. Mystery. This is a complete satire, not intended to mock religion. I meant to enter this in. Write about a gallery whose paintings come alive at night. Oops. On the evening of April 6th, 30 AD, chaos ensued during an impromptu farewell dinner party. A hidden underground chamber hosted a jubilant soiree beneath the renowned Louvre Museum. The celebratory evening took a sinister turn as it transformed into a horrifying murder scene. The guests, driven by an overwhelming desire to uncover the culprit among them, were determined to solve the mysterious crime. The night began when the Louvre Gallery's lights faded to black. Mr. Dali flipped the sign on the door, reading closed. Greeting him as he stepped outside was a stunning display of swirling hues: cobalt blue, incandescent yellow, and verdant green intermingled in the starry sky, resembling confetti. The stars twinkled like a celestial choir, harmonizing with his melodic whistle. Their mystical light illuminated the sky. He followed the otherworldly glow as it led him back home. Unease settled over him as he walked. He suspected he might have left the doors unlocked or the lights on. Behind the museum's closed doors, 3 distorted clocks with persistent memories chimed 7 or 8 times, sounding garbled. The hands of the clock, resembling molten lava, melted across the front desk. The time dissolved and spread across the ornate chairs and marble floor. Across the way, bustling activity filled the refectory of Monastero di San Lorenzo. The atmosphere was a mix of intense excitement and underlying unease, capturing the poignant moment. Fragrant scents of yeast, toasted grains, melted butter, roasted meats, and aromatic herbs wafted through the air, tantalizing and mouth-watering. Shouting in the grand chamber, Andrew exclaimed, "Almost 8!" He fidgeted, holding a torch, and lit the remaining candles on the grand table. "This useless lighter won't work," he exclaimed, slamming it down on the table in frustration. Moonlight streamed through the windows, casting a radiant glow on the refectory. The flickering candles created a serene ambiance despite the commotion in the chamber. "To hell with it all," Peter mutters. He opens a bottle of Chianti and starts guzzling it from the lip of the wicker vessel, feeling annoyed. With red-stained lips, Peter exclaims, "This is an absolute catastrophe." John and Philip emerged from the kitchen, coughing and struggling to breathe, while a cloud of smoke engulfed them. The room fell silent. "We still have bread," John says, cowering behind Philip, hoping nothing was flying at his head through the air. A ruckus ensued. Bartholomew stomped his foot. "You need to pull yourself together. Guests will arrive at any moment. This night is supposed to be a celebration. Quit fighting like gladiators in the Monera." Thomas and Matthew rushed to the door as the bell chimed to greet their first guest. "Welcome, Mona. It brings me great joy to have you," Thomas said, escorting the introspective and ethereal figure through the door. With an enigmatic smile, hinting at hidden secrets and unspoken feelings, Mona thanked her hosts for the kind invitation. After Mona, guests flooded through the door. Peter appreciated the guests' punctuality because the guest of honor was due to appear soon. The young ladies of Avignon huddled in a corner. Nadira Mbali embodied the fierce spirit of independence, by wearing splendid tribal patterns inspired by Africa. Her clothing celebrated her heritage. Isabella Ramos's distinct and striking features drew Nadira into deep conversations. They explored the complexities of womanhood and society's limiting expectations. Isabella's words were sharp and precise, dissecting human emotions with a scalpel. She challenged societal norms and conventions. Sofia Calderon's avant-garde cubist aesthetic captivated guests. Her fragmented and distorted forms shattered conventional ideas of representation. The quirky style invited viewers to critically examine their perceptions of reality, immersing them in an intriguing and thought-provoking experience. Eva Serrano radiated confidence and sensuality. Her unapologetic sexuality defied societal expectations of modesty and control. Eva fearlessly moved her body across the chambers like a dancer. She hobnobbed with guests while challenging preconceived notions of femininity and inviting them to confront their inhibitions. Carmen Reyes emerged while concealing her face with a mask. Her fearless advocacy for women's rights and empowerment was her prime topic of discussion. Against patriarchy, she wielded her words as weapons, her voice as sharp as her wit. In each debate, she advocated for gender equality. Carmen's unwavering commitment to justice and the refusal of silence symbolized strength and resilience. With a mesmerizing display of ethereal beauty, Venus, the goddess of love, revealed her presence. Her allure transcended the limitations of the mortal realm. The enchanting depths of her ocean blue eyes mirrored the boundless compassion and understanding that resided within her soul. As she mingled, she commanded attention with her statuesque figure, which exuded sensuality and strength. A charismatic and enigmatic lad, Adam flirted with Venus by boasting about his creation. The confidence in the mastery of his anatomy and intricate details evoked awe and inspiration in Venus. Adam's charm was undeniable, with piercing blue eyes that held untold stories. He witnessed her captivating charm and inner radiance, which mesmerized him. She offered solace and ignited the flames of passion within his heart. Venus was captivated by his brilliant mind, filled with insatiable curiosity and a humble demeanor. Isabella Fontaine was a ravishing and imaginative woman. Her demeanor enchanted Alessandro Fiore. They bonded over their shared passion for art. As they embraced, their love and desire for each other became apparent with every gentle stroke of her hair. Their passion reflected the love that burns within their hearts, and their souls became forever entwined in the kiss, heard worldwide. The guests surrounded a group of dogs dressed in human clothing, playing poker around a table. The dogs were all engaged in the game when a raven flew to the skylight, warning the guests that their guest of honor was nearing. Peter gathered the guests in the middle of the chamber, and as the doors opened, everyone yelled, "Surprise! Jesus!" Jesus paused, blushing with shock. He relished the moment, his kind eyes reflecting his deep compassion for everyone present. His serene and benevolent face radiated a sense of divine wisdom and love. Long, flowing hair and a well-groomed beard complemented his appearance. He moved across the marble floors elegantly, showcasing his spiritual authority and transcendence, while wearing a modest, billowing garment extending to the ground. After removing the plum cloak draped over his shoulders, he adjusted the sash around his waist. Everyone present was crowded around Jesus, eager to touch the hem of his garment or bask in his presence. When he spoke, he filled the room with awe and reverence. His words carried a weight of profound wisdom and grace. His eyes sparkled with kindness, drawing everyone in. The atmosphere shifted as a sense of peace and hope enveloped the room. Peter gathered the guests around the table, rallying them to make a toast. He held up his goblet and said, "To the man who brings light and love wherever he goes, may he bless all with his presence on the road that he ventures forth on. The Louvre will miss you, Jesus." To everyone's dismay, John and Philip stood and announced that their dinner had gone awry. They'd only be serving bread and butter. James the younger ran around filling everyone's glasses with wine to ease the tension caused by the unexpected change in dinner plans. Eliza Hawthorne stood out among the guests with serene strength and unwavering determination. Her piercing eyes, reminiscent of the golden hues of an autumn sky, mirrored her inner fortitude. Her hair, arranged in a bun, complemented her firm lips. They exuded an air of stoicism and resolve that belied her delicate features. In his convictions, Henry stayed steadfast with a few words. He gazed at the crowd with eyes resembling the roots of an ancient oak tree that shaded their farmhouse. He silently stood beside Eliza as she extended her invitation with effortless grace. She declares, "We propose to share the bounty of our garden, inviting everyone to partake in the fresh vegetables outside in our cart." With his broad shoulders and hands roughened by years of manual labor, Henry showcases his physical prowess. They embodied rugged masculinity and muted strength as he reached for a piece of bread. Eliza's hands, calloused from years of hard work on the family farm, coaxing life from the fertile soil, handed him the warm butter. Laughter and chatter filled the room. Everyone enjoyed the simple meal and each other's company. Wine flowed with the harmonious chatter, celebrating Jesus. Amelia Munch interrupted the chatter by wailing a piercing scream, which reverberated through the refectory like shattering glass. Fear and existential angst etched anxiety across her porcelain skin. Her haunting beauty and piercing green eyes conveyed a profound sense of terror. Everyone gathered around curiously to see a nude woman lying on a couch covered in blood. Judas Iscariot declares that someone among them is the menaced assassin. The group exchanges nervous glances, unsure of whom to trust. Suspicions grow, causing the once warm and inviting atmosphere to turn cold and tense. Iscariot's accusation lingers, casting a shadow over the joyous gathering. With unwavering resolve and dignity, Margaret Whittaker started whistling an eerie tune as she rocked in her chair. Despite facing hardships, she exuded tranquility and grace. Her silver hair was pulled back tight in a bun, and her hands were folded in her lap. Though tired and worn from years of worry, Margaret's eyes sparkled with muted intelligence, as if she knew something. Her calm demeanor drew others to her, commanding their attention. As the evening wore on, whispers of suspicion and curiosity circulated among the guests. Margaret's enigmatic presence had drawn them all in, and unease settled over the room as they awaited her next move. Amelia Monk wailed a piercing scream out of nowhere again. The scream reverberated through the refectory like shattering glass. Fear etched her porcelain skin with anxiety and existential angst. Her haunting beauty and piercing green eyes again convey a profound sense of terror. With a sense of exacerbation, Mona Lisa wonders, what is it now? Her face changes, adorned with a tapestry of emotions that flows with each fleeting moment, captivating all who dared to bask in her presence. Mona Lisa possesses the uncanny ability to cloak her thoughts and feelings in an aura of mystery. Intrigued, all the guests surround her. "The girl with the pearl earring only wears one," stuttered Emila Munch. "Behold, it is right there," she said, pointing to the lifeless woman. Underneath her body, a pearl sparkled, unraveling a clue. Munch's discovery challenged the guests to confront their wildest fears. Emilia epitomized the situation with anxiety and the human condition. She reminded everyone of their shared vulnerabilities in the situation. The need for camaraderie and understanding in this tragic moment was undeniable, urging immediate action. The girl with the pearl earring reached up to cover her bare ear. Her delft was sublime and mysterious. The girl's modest, dark-colored gown and her long chestnut hair exuded strength and resilience, but her piercing blue eyes divulged her guilt, unveiling her hidden desire and rebellion against societal expectations. "Show us your matching earrings," said the bulldog, wearing a top hat and a monocle. A terrier in a tuxedo, a dachshund in a sweater vest, and a golden retriever in a baseball cap chimed in. "Where is your missing trinket, yeah?" They quipped and resumed the game of poker to bet on whodunit. Admitting her guilt, Emilia, the intelligent and keen girl with the opal accessory, takes responsibility. She knew escaping this blunder would be impossible. Her eyes reflect the depth of her inner turmoil and dreams. "Envy clouded my vision, distorting my perception of reality," she cried. At a nearby diner, a police officer was consoling a young boy who had run away from home. Out of nowhere, his walkie-talkie crackled to life, notifying him of a homicide in progress. The officer rushed to the scene, apprehending the girl with the missing pearl earring believed to be involved in the murder. The situation's urgency demanded swift action, and the officer quickly secured the suspect. Jesus blessed her as she repented of her sins and was hauled off to Artemisia Gentileschi prison for high-risk female offenders in Surrey. His compassion grew as he saw the remorse in her eyes, knowing she was just a victim of circumstances. As she left in handcuffs, he committed to visiting her and helping her turn her life around. Emilia looked back at the kind-hearted man, with tears streaming down her face, grateful for his compassion during her darkest moment. She vowed to make amends for her past mistakes and to strive for a better future. With a determined spirit, Jesus watched the girl with the pearl earring disappear out the door, vowing to guide her toward redemption. The scene touched the police officer's heart, sparking a glimmer of hope in his chest. Perhaps the girl's story will have a different ending with the Savior by her side. A sense of unease lingered in Mr. Dolly's mind as he rattled his keys in the museum's front door. He meticulously inspected the premises, ensuring every door was locked and the lights were extinguished. When the last switch flipped, a surprise gasp reverberated through the room. The startled guests scampered, their footsteps echoing in the deserted halls. Dig deep. Other than a faint glow coming from one of the back rooms, the town's charity shop was in darkness, its front door firmly closed. Although it had opened in 1985, the building had been used commercially since the 1800s, when it had variously been a pharmacy, a bank, and a tavern. The shop was close to the river in Marpleton, a pleasant English market town which had once been home to a nearby priory. In ancient times, monks had wandered back and forth to sell their wares at a market which still existed in diminished form across the road. Regulars were now peering through the shop window, but the main lights stayed off. A few of the shop's helpers were huddled in the back room. Patrick, the treasurer, had collected the spare keys from the greengrocer to let them in. The gatherers were addressing one topic, namely, why their long-serving manager, Rhea, had failed to open up the day before. "I just can't understand it," Ivy, one of the shop's founding members, said. "I've never known her not to turn up, unless she's on holiday. In all the years I've known Rhea, she's never had a day's sickness." "Wasn't she going to New Zealand to visit her sister?" Patrick asked. "She was, but not until the following week. It's in the shop diary. Here, Take a look. Ivy tapped the relevant pages meaningfully. I'm not doubting you, Ivy, but she may have got the dates wrong. She wasn't in the habit of making mistakes. Ivy's loyalty knew no bounds. Patrick adopted a different approach. You've tried Ria's landline, I take it? Several times. Each time it went straight to answer phone. Right. Still, I expect we're worrying over nothing. But you have to admit she has been a bit distracted lately. Someone piped up. Patrick turned to Silvana hopefully, but she shook her head. I've tried her on her mobile, but nothing. Silvana was a refugee who had joined the shop 2 years earlier. Since Ria had taken her under her wing when she first came to England, her English had improved markedly. Silvana had been on the verge of admitting her true feelings for Ria. Reality had crushed the likelihood of her returning to her homeland anytime soon and been replaced by something entirely unexpected. An overwhelming love for another human being. Silvana's great wish was to know whether that love was returned. Ria clearly liked her, but was it worth risking their friendship for more? The path to such an admission seemed littered with obstacles. Now, the mystery of Ria's whereabouts could be added to an already growing list. Did Ria say anything about changing her holiday plans, Silvana? Patrick asked, determined to get to the bottom of things. Number I went to her house for my lesson last Wednesday. She told me she'd be away all next week. Silvana had considered the matter carefully. Yes, that is so. Patrick said. I guess I'll have to contact the area manager about reopening the shop. You'll need to do that. Volunteer phone numbers are stored in the locked cabinet, and only Ria has the key. Ivy interjected. Head office have contact numbers too. Everyone knew Ria always carried a set of keys on a fob attached to a waistband. Patrick joked she secretly had a cellar key for the shop's more trying customers, to which he'd received an enigmatic smile. The actual cellar key had supposedly vanished in the mists of time. Certainly, there was no call to use the cellar with ample storage space elsewhere. In any case, the cellar door was kept permanently locked, preventing anyone getting trapped if there was a fire. Patrick scrutinized the rota sheets. Maybe Judd would be willing to help if we reopen the shop, he suggested. Silvana, who distrusted Judd, said nothing. 3 months earlier, dressed in black jeans and hoodie and trailed by a mournful cocker spaniel, Judd had shown up to inquire about volunteering. When Silvana had bent to pat his dog, it had backed off whimpering. She gets nervous round new people, Judd had explained. Tucking away the banking money, Patrick had gone to fetch Ria. A young man's inquiring about volunteering, he'd told her. Shall I send him through? What's he like? Ria was wearily tapping information into the computer at her desk. He seems pleasant enough. His dog's rather nervous. Ria massaged her aching neck. Send him through, she said. Ria had confided in Silvana about her difficulty in getting references for Judd Dig Deep. Eventually, he'd presented her with 2 typed ones, supposedly from an ex-employer. With typical thoroughness, Ria had rung one of the numbers to learn more about the new helper. When a voice answered sounding suspiciously like Judd's, she'd intended to investigate further. However, other things had intervened. A few weeks after this uncharacteristic omission, Judd was indeed proving to be an asset. Willing to turn his hand to anything, it was a relief not having to lift heavy sacks and boxes donated by the public from one end of the shop to the other. With little guidance, Judd had transformed one of the sorting rooms, leaving it immaculate. One evening, when Silvana cycled past the back of the shop, she noticed a group of undesirables hanging with Judd, engrossed in conversation. She hurried past, hoping she hadn't been seen. She raised her concerns to Rhea, who told her it was nothing to worry about, that she'd keep an eye on things, and bafflingly added, "I'd rather you didn't mention this to anyone else." The day the shop reopened, without Rhea at the helm, was Silvana's birthday. Patrick invited her to join him later for one of his wife's specials, homemade pizza and pear wine. The food tasted delicious, but she pushed her plate to one side. "You're still worried about Rhea, aren't you?" Patrick observed. "Her cell phone is dead. It's strange. I knocked on her door last night, but still no answer." Patrick got up. "I tell you what, I happen to know Rhea's neighbor, Angela, from the book club. She looks after the garden when Rhea goes away. She may well have a spare key. I'm sure there's nothing to worry about, but it wouldn't do any harm to check if everything is all right." Silvana was relieved. "That's a great idea. Thanks, Patrick. I've been known to have a few in my time. Come on, get your coat. Let's see if we can solve this mystery." Half an hour later, the pair were standing in Rhea's house. The hallway led into an open-plan kitchen diner with gleaming countertops and state-of-the-art gadgets. The smell of coffee lingered invitingly. When Rhea's partner Lindsay had died 5 years earlier, she'd left her with a generous insurance payout. Silvana sighed, remembering the other day when she and Rhea had drawn close over a bottle of wine. Rhea had even given her a present. "Only to be opened on your birthday," she instructed. But beneath the gaiety, she'd been out of sorts. Rhea had brushed aside Silvana's offer of help with a brisk, "I'm fine." "I'll check down here if you do upstairs," Patrick said, jolting Silvana back to the present. The passport was lying on the bedside table. However, the photograph bore little resemblance to the person Silvana had come to love and admire. Having spent time working for a private detective agency when she was younger, instinct overrode caution, and she began a meticulous search for clues. Predictably, Rhea's shop keys were lying on the bedside table. More unexpected was the discovery of another set of keys attached to a ring with a tag labeled "Cellar." "Are you all right?" Patrick called up from the bottom of the staircase. "I'm okay." Silvana tucked the cellar keys into her bag. Then she remembered Rhea's present and opened it. She was surprised to find a pay-as-you-go phone already charged up. "Well?" Patrick exclaimed. "Did you find anything?" "Just this." She gave him the passport. "That's odd. It appears she never made it to New Zealand after all. Maybe it's time to involve the police." "What? Right now?" "It is rather late. I doubt they'll want to be disturbed tonight." Patrick thought of the half-opened bottle of wine waiting back home. "I'll act tomorrow morning. Shall I walk you back?" "No need. I can take care of myself," Silvana said firmly. The moon was her only companion as Silvana descended the cellar steps at the back of the shop. With growing unease, she encased her hands in a pair of gloves and took off her shoes. She didn't want anyone to know of her presence. After 3 attempts, the door creaked open and she was met by a cloying damp, overlaid by something else. Something unpleasant. Tensing, she flicked on her phone torch and spotted a narrow corridor with another door at the end. Filled with foreboding, she slowly turned the handle. She smelt the body before she saw it. Wearing the trademark hoodie, the bloating, discolored thing in front of her, could hardly be called human. Judd lay slumped against an upturned table, his eyes staring and opaque. Silvana covered her face with a handkerchief to prevent retching and inspected the scene, noting the bloodied head and smashed vase lying beside it. The blood had pooled and dried, staining the clothes and floor. She was no expert, but if the rotting undertones were anything to go by, death had probably occurred a few days earlier. Even then, horror was blunted by relief. So long as it wasn't Rhea, she had the strength for anything. But where was Rhea? Adjusting to the dimness, Silvana tried to make sense of her surroundings. Some crudely constructed shelves filled with storage tubs and packets lay stacked against one of the walls. The place was obviously some kind of drugs den. Could Judd's death have been the result of a disagreement with other gang members? Silvana's stomach lurched. What if they turned up and found her? She'd only just locked the cellar door and picked up her shoes when she heard voices on the driveway. Somehow, she managed to scramble behind one of the bins underneath the fire escape. Hardly daring to breathe, she waited until the scuffling feet passed and the gang disappeared down the cellar steps. Then, she bolted into the night as fast as her trembling legs would carry her. She would decide what to do when she got home. Halfway across the town's park, muffled ringtones came from her bag. "Silvana?" The voice was clear as day at the other end of the line. "Rhea, is it really you? Thank God. Are you all right? Where are you calling from? Talk to me." "If I tell you, you must keep it to yourself," Rhea said urgently. "Of course. By the way, I have your keys." "The shop keys?" "The cellar keys. Long story. I have just been down there. I found him. Judd. Dead. It was horrible." Silvana began to laugh hysterically as the shock kicked in. "You went into the cellar?" Rhea repeated. "Why?" "I needed to know if you were all right. I was so afraid I was going to find you, not him. When I saw your passport, I knew you couldn't have gone abroad, that something must have happened. I didn't get the chance." "What happened?" "I will tell you, but not now. Not on the phone. Patrick is planning to go to the police tomorrow about your passport." Rhea asked. "Did you touch anything when you went into the cellar? Did you touch him?" "No." Silvana's teeth were chattering from shock. "It's cold outside. I was wearing gloves. But what do you know about Judd?" "Why were you wearing gloves?" "I don't know. I had a bad feeling. I didn't want to be implicated in anything. Back home, I once worked at a detective agency. I learned about not touching crime scenes." "You may want to call the police," Rhea said. "But please, can I ask you not to tell them I got in contact or about me giving you the phone? We'll meet soon. That is, if you want to. I'll understand if you don't want anything more to do with me." "Of course I want to meet you." It seemed silly pretending now. "It's all I think about." Silvana's heart flipped when she saw the distant figure standing on the pier below. The matinee performance at the Pavilion Theater was in full swing, and the pier was almost deserted. She came up behind Rhea, patting her on the shoulder. "Hey!" Rhea turned, instantly relaxing when she saw her friend. "Hey!" Silvana sank into Rhea's arms. For a long time, the pair embraced. "It's so good to see you," Silvana said. "Likewise." Rhea glanced round. "Does anyone know you're here?" "Number, and I'm so hungry." Rhea grinned. "How about some fish and chips? I'll treat you." "You mean the famous English fish and chips?" Rhea grinned. "I've discovered a great place on the front." She linked arms with Silvana. "Come on, let's eat. Then, I'll tell you everything." Judd was a bad lot, Rhea admitted later. "He was running a drug racket, and I threatened to report him to the police." "It doesn't surprise me. But how did you find out?" "Not long after I joined the shop, I was clearing up one of the back rooms and came across a discarded cabinet. There were 2 sets of cellar keys in it. I never told anyone about them, partly because I didn't want a lot of fuss. I wanted to keep it to myself. Unfortunately, Judd caught me coming up the stairs one evening and demanded to store his things there. I didn't like the way he spoke to me. When I refused, he threatened to torture his dog in front of me. He implied if I didn't comply, I'd be next. His eyes were so cold. For the second time in my life, I felt real fear. There would be time enough to ask about the first time, Silvana thought, clasping Ria's hand. I'm afraid there's more, Ria said dully. You probably won't want anything to do with me when you hear the rest. Silvana clutched Ria's hand more tightly. She'd come too far to be brushed aside. Why don't you let me be the judge of that? She said firmly. Whatever it is, we'll bear it together. You see, I love you. I need you to know that. You do? For a moment, Ria's face shone. That's a relief, she said, laughing. I thought it was just me. Did you? Silvana laughed too. I may have had my suspicions, but I didn't want to say anything. Oh, I'm so happy, Silvana said. But hold your horses before we get carried away, Ria warned. Hold my horses? An English expression. It means don't count your chickens. Count my chickens? Silvana, my love, let me finish my story before you say anything. Okay, sorry. Silvana nibbled a stray chip. Ria was smiling in spite of everything. In the end, I couldn't stand being held to ransom by a bully like Judd. A few days ago, I foolishly decided to confront him in the cellar. He went to grab a knife from the table. There was an old jar on one of the shelves, and as he turned, I smashed it over his head. She shuddered. I couldn't tell you all this, but I made sure you had the phone before I left. I hoped you'd stay in touch. The day after, I headed here, not wanting to be traced. I paid for everything with cash. But surely the police will realize you only acted in self-defense, Silvana insisted. Perhaps I should have gone to them straight away, but I couldn't face it. Ria's hesitation was palpable, especially considering what? In spite of the warmth between them, Silvana felt a sudden chill, like someone walking over a grave. What aren't you telling me? Ria's voice broke. I'm terminally ill. At best, I only have months to live. At worst, it will be weeks. I have all the medication I need. I just want to spend my last days in a place with happy memories. I can't believe it. But Silvana knew Ria was speaking the truth. She tried to disguise her anguish. How long have you known? She whispered. I only found out for certain the day before Judd threatened me in the cellar. Maybe I wasn't thinking straight. I should have told the police everything long before, but by then I was in too deep. I'm going to stay with you. Silvana had never been more certain of anything. Ria shook her head. Stay with me tonight and go back tomorrow. It won't be long before the police check the cellar. It will look odd if you're not there. I have every faith in your survival skills. Look how far you've come. In the meantime, there's something I want you to have. What is it? Ria handed Silvana 2 envelopes. Inside one is a plan of the cellar. After years of searching, I think I may have finally uncovered the sealed entrance to a tunnel leading to the old priory. My father was a historian and suspected there might be one near the shop. The other is a copy of my will. It's my final and dearest wish to make your life better when I've gone, son of Satan. I awoke to a bright light streaming through a crack in one of the wooden boards I had put up in a paranoid, booze-infused haze. It was June, and the heat was stifling. My mouth was the kind of dry where your cheeks and lips stick to your teeth, the leftover taste of alcohol offensive. I sat up slowly, the usual nausea kicking in. my head pounding, room spinning. I looked down at my shaky hands, trying to steady myself as I half rolled off the couch. A sweaty silhouette of me left behind, my shirt stuck to me. I stumbled to the kitchen, only allowing one eye open to keep things in focus, my head down as I waited for the kettle to boil, impatient as the usual anxiety kicked in. I knew my drinking was a problem, it always has been. But as I'm nearing 40 now, the mornings are becoming more unpleasant and unmanageable. But I know I'll never stop. I put 2 big scoops of coffee and boiling water into a mug, topping it off with a shot of vodka. I downed it and made another, willing the shakes to stop, my eyes blurry and stomach churning. I took the second mug back to the couch and turned on the TV, slowly coming back to life. My mind was quieter today, a numbness over the usual paranoia or anger that resides in me. Sometimes I think it's a darkness, straight from the pits of hell, the angel on one shoulder missing. As long as I could remember, I had been plagued with dark thoughts, a curse passed down from my abusive father. A life of isolation and self-sabotage, sending me spiraling further into this abyss over the years. Some days, I think I can snap out of it, or have a small voice telling me I need help, and that maybe there's still hope for me. But this had just become a way of life for me now, my norm. I had come to accept it. Alcohol and Netflix were my only friends. I sustained an easy work-from-home job that only stole a few hours each day. My manager didn't bother me, and I didn't bother him. He didn't care as long as I hit the numbers, which I always did. It didn't pay much, but kept a roof over my head and supplied my vices. I flicked straight to the news channel like I did every day. There had been a string of murders in the city, and now they were saying, there is a pattern suggesting that it's the work of serial killer. I shivered, watching as they wheeled a 6th victim in a body bag, a one-way trip to the morgue. My head pounded again. I swallowed some paracetamol with a swig of vodka, not taking my eyes off the TV. The killings had been brutal. I watched along each time with a morbid curiosity, like I was watching a fictional Netflix series about serial killers, almost forgetting that these were people living in the same city I am. All victims were female, early 20s, normally Good Samaritan types, people with a squeaky clean record who wouldn't have even stolen a pack of gum in their short life. Most were religious and attended church on a Sunday. I'd be safe, standing at 6 feet, fashioning a Jesus-length beard and enough petty crimes on my record to piss off anyone in law enforcement. The media were raving about the symbolism the killer left behind and had even given him a nickname, Son of Satan. It doesn't quite have the same ring as Jack the Ripper or the Zodiac Killer, but they were just scratching the surface of what he does and what he is capable of. This guy was different. According to reporters, he stalks his victims over the course of 6 days, leaving satanic symbolism in his midst. Never leaves a trace of evidence, other than gifts of animal bones or a pentagram, sometimes an upside-down cross, all with no fingerprints or so much as a wisp of hair. The symbols were the only thing that changed from kill to kill. The 6-day stalk, bondage of the hands and feet, and 6 stab wounds to the heart were always consistent. I shivered again. On the dark web, some crime scene photos were leaked and spread vastly around social media. The bloody sight, something out of a horror movie. I chugged another glass of vodka. The police had nothing. They made an educated guess that it could be a male in their 30s or 40s. Probably some crazy religious guy that they had depicted as some skinny, sad sod who lives in their mother's basement. I rolled my eyes and half chuckled, a wheezy sound that made me cough. One thing they all agreed on was that the killer was clever and meticulous. He taunted his victims, and he taunted police, never leaving a trace. All they could do was warn people to be safe and on guard. If anyone experienced any stalking or hints that they were next, were to report to police straight away. Boy, are they not ready for the amount of calls they're about to receive. The fear the media have installed does half the job for the killer. I rolled my eyes again, pouring another glass, slightly amused by the stupidity of law enforcement and media. I turned it off and opened my laptop to get on with some work before heading out to the shop. The bills aren't going to pay themselves. Completing work in record time, I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, then finally brushed the rancid taste away, swallowing some toothpaste for good measure. I looked up at the disheveled guy staring back. Hair awry, bags hung heavy around my dark pinpoint-like eyes, the spit of my father. I inwardly groaned, my heart palpitating slightly. I changed into some dark tracksuits, tamed my hair with cap and donned some sunglasses. I whistled as I walked outside, sweat pouring from my skin, the back of my neck clammy. I gritted my teeth with discomfort, while the sun beat down harder, the whistling a distraction. The streets were mostly empty, a few dog walkers and cars dotted around. I found myself at the shop and enjoyed the cool feel of air conditioning, taking a long breath in. I picked up the essentials: vodka, fags, and instant noodles, the economy making every transaction feel painful. I felt that rage again as I tapped my card and stormed out, trying to calm my thoughts, and drank the first bottle on my way back. Needing a pit stop, I paused on a bench, starting on my second bottle and chain smoking, until I felt sick and black spots started to cloud my sight. My head hurt as evil thoughts and feelings flooded me. I eventually stumbled home, unsure how I got there and why it was so dark out already. I tripped over my own feet and crashed onto the couch face first, full blackness taking over. I was in and out of consciousness for several days, time missing as I looked at my watch and realized nearly a week had gone by. I really need to stop drinking. I went to the kitchen. Coffee, vodka, couch. The routine continued. I turned the TV on, and yet another murder had occurred, less than a mile from my home. Same pattern for the most part. I smirked and flicked to the next channel. Headline: Son of Satan breaks pattern. My eyebrows creased and my heart rate picked up. Killer stabs victim 6 times to the abdomen, left the house in disarray. Forensics have bagged new evidence. That couldn't be right. My father's voice boomed in my head. I switched to another channel. Son of Satan copycat killer. New information has come to light as detectives connect current killings with a string of murders with similar symbolism and pattern that happened 30 years ago in the countryside. Killer was never found. The voice boomed louder. I ran to the bathroom to throw up and realized my clothes were soaked with blood. I fucked up. My father would be writhing in his grave. His idiot son carrying on his legacy gets caught because he can't handle his booze. I threw up again. Panic rose and I gripped my chest as I struggled to breathe, spots of lights in my vision. The room was closing in. I turned on the shower, holding onto the sink with one hand, ripping off my clothes with the other, before allowing the scalding hot water to wash away my sins. "I'm sorry," I screamed, the disappointment of my dead dad all too much. I sobbed on the floor of the shower, shame and guilt ripping me apart. Red and blue lights flashed past my window, snapping me awake, and I stood up, getting ready run, fight or flight kicking in. Bang, bang, bang! My front door rattled. Panic-stricken, I scrambled for my clothes and slipped, the alcohol haze wearing off. My head hurt as it hit the sink on my way down. I couldn't move. The room was spinning. A louder bang. Footsteps. I faded out. The moral of the story. The guard leading me into the room gives a hard yank on the chain. Pain lances through my neck, and I snarl, baring my impressive fangs for full effect. He shies away, naked fear on his face, before remembering which of us is supposed to be the prisoner. "Watch it, mutt, or you'll be drinking out of the toilet through a wired jaw," he says, his tough guy tone betrayed by the quaver in his voice and the stink of fear in his scent. I snort in contempt. Oh, please, CO. We both know who's afraid of the big bad wolf. His expression hardens, mouth tightening into a white line. One hand drops to the baton sheathed at his waist. "That will do, officer," a new voice says. "I'll ask you to do your job without further violating my client's civil rights." I look past the guard and his impotent rage to see a man sitting at the lone table in the room. The space is dimly lit, a single flickering fluorescent bulb recessed in the ceiling behind a grating. But I've got good eyesight. The guy's so short his legs barely clear the edge of the chair. I take in his expensive suit, immaculately groomed hair, and a face so wrinkled and wizened it looks like a prune staked out in the desert for a week. He smells of cologne, silk, a hint of moldy straw, and... That's curious. No fear. Not a hint of that very familiar scent. Interesting. That must mean he's either stupid or a villain. Like me. The guard secures my chain to a ring on the floor, giving me just enough play to reach my side of the table, then snaps a padlock on it with a loud click. He then steps back to stand against the wall. The short man's eyes, small, dark, and hard behind wire-rimmed glasses, flick to the guard. "Leave me alone with my client, if you please." "Not a good idea, buddy," the guard says, glancing at me. "You know who this is, right?" "Of course I do," the man snaps. "I also know the privileges that exist between the accused and his legal representation. Now, must I ask again?" The guard scowls, shakes his head, and leaves, slamming the door shut behind him. The lock on the door clicks loudly, too. I casually stretch as much as I can with the chain and collar, give a shake to fluff out my thick, gray fur. "Client, eh? Funny. I don't remember hiring a lawyer." The faintest of smiles ghosts across the man's face. "You haven't. Yet. But I'm certain you'll want to retain my services after you hear what I have to say." "Why's that?" I ask in the most bored tone I can manage. "Because I can make sure that you don't spend the rest of your life behind bars." I can't help it. My ears prick up at that. I force a derisive snort. "Not likely. They have a pretty good case against me. And that is precisely why you want me to represent you." A positively oily grin stretches his lips. "Allow me to introduce myself." 2 fingers extend to place a business card on the table between us. I glance down at it. "Mr. R, attorney at law, specialist in defense of the wrongly accused." The black letters stand out against the crisp white, cutting across a spinning wheel picked out in gold foil. Yeah, it's a dead giveaway. Mr. Ray, that'd be short for... He raises a small hand to stop me before I can say it. I would prefer if we kept this from being a first-name relationship. Yellowed teeth glint as he grins again. "Okay," I say, with a flick of an ear. "Lawyer, now, huh? Previous line of work didn't suit you?" Let's just say that it was far too labor-intensive. I find my new career to be much more rewarding. It also didn't require much of an adjustment, ethically speaking. So, Mr. R it is for now. For that matter, What would you like me to call you? I shrug, a human gesture I've perfected over the years. Most people just scream wolf and run away when they see me. I see. Then I shall address you as Mr. Wolf, for simplicity's sake. Whatever. Now, Mr. R settles himself in his hard wooden chair. I'm familiar with the particulars of your case, Mr. Wolf, at least those that have been made publicly available. But perhaps you'd like to tell me your side of the story? Now, I actually laugh. My side of the story? Not a lot of people are interested in that. As far as most of them are concerned, there's only ever one side. The one where I'm the villain, just out to do villain things. It's just how the story goes. So you don't deny the charges? Well now, Mr. R, that'd be telling, wouldn't it? I may be facing the headsman's axe or life in a cage, but I don't see any reason to make it easier on everyone. Mr. Wolf, we in the legal profession are required to keep our clients' confidence and cannot be compelled to reveal what is told us in confidence. Okay, whether he's telling the truth or not, I find I just don't care. Well, yeah, I did it. Whatever they say, I did it all. Mr. R removes his glasses, pulls out a kerchief, and starts polishing the lenses. You stalked young Peter and his friends and attempted to murder a duck, I believe. I pretend to wince. Yeah. Got so close, but she was just that lucky. I sigh. I can still taste feathers. And you destroyed the property of 3 industrious pigs? Hey, not my fault if their houses weren't up to code. Of course, then they tried to burn me alive. Lost a lot of fur on that one. Then you actually consumed a young lady and her grandmother? I give a little laugh. And the grandmother's cat. Not too many people remember that part, but I kinda missed out on the satisfaction of a good meal in the end. After I woke up on the riverbank, went through 3 surgeries to get all the rocks out of my belly, and spent 6 months in that stupid plastic cone. Well, let's just say that a certain woodsman is next on the menu if I ever get out of here. Mr. R finishes cleaning his glasses, sets them back in place, all without batting an eye. I see. So, you are guilty, and I must assume that the police have all the evidence they need, since you are sitting here before me, chained to the floor. I pull back my lips in a grin, or a snarl. Hard for me to tell the difference when I'm doing it. Like I said, I'm the villain. I do bad things. No matter how the story goes, that's always how it ends. It's the... oh, what do they call it? The moral. That's right. The moral of the story. Bad people do bad things. Mr. R arches one scraggly eyebrow. What if I told you the story doesn't have to end that way? I cock my head to one side. How's that? Mr. Wolf, my job doesn't necessarily consist of proving you innocent, Mr. R says. Not when I can make you into a victim instead of a villain. Say what? That's right, Mr. Wolf. Instead of making this about your crime, we can make it about you. We'll play up your tragic past, your difficult upbringing. Why? You said it yourself. People look at you and see nothing more than a scary animal. That's prejudice. It's colored your entire life, hasn't it? Is all I managed to get out in reply. Honestly, I'd never thought about it like that. Do you have a mate? Mr. R asks suddenly. Pups? A pack that relies on you? Needs you? What? No, nothing like that. I give my head a shake, trying to wrap my head around all this. Are you saying that you can make it look like I was the victim instead of the villain? Exactly, Mr. Wolf. Now his grin looks positively evil. We'll put you in front of the cameras, paint you a tragic victim of circumstances and biases. All that's required is the right spin on the facts. And believe me, Mr. Wolf, I know how to put the right spin on things. No doubt. All of this is confusing and, well, kinda disgusting. Look, why go through all that? Just post my bail and I'll skip town, how about? I'm only half joking. Again, he arches that eyebrow. To go on the run? To be hunted and hounded the rest of your life? Now I grin. I'm the big bad wolf, remember? What you just described, that's my normal. It doesn't have to be, says Mr. R. When I'm through, you'll spend a few months in prison, after which you'll be set up for life. A comfortable den, plenty of game to hunt, even your own woods if you want. No one will dare bother you again. With enough positive media coverage, I can work out a very favorable deal for you. Deals are something of a specialty for me. Now, how's that sound? I stare at him, narrowing my eyes. What do you get out of this, Mr. Ray? Something tells me you're not doing it out of the kindness of your heart. He gives a short laugh. Oh, goodness no. You see, in the process of rewriting the narrative, there will be interviews, televised appearances, at least one book deal. That means money, Mr. Wolf. Rather, a lot of money. His oily grin reappears, and I get 50%. Oh, now that's disgusting, sickening. He wants me to lie about what I am, pretend to be something I'm not. A victim, a weak, pathetic, mewling victim, and all so he can exploit my villainy for cash? I don't know, I say. It all sounds like a big lie to me. And you've never lied before? Something about his tone of voice, so cocky and superior, makes my hackles rise. Literally. I seem to recall one of the charges is impersonating a little old lady. That's rather dishonest, don't you think? I growl deep in my throat. I like to think of it as deceptive. A predator has to be cunning after all. Indeed. Come now, Mr. Wolf. Let's stop bandying words. He lifts a briefcase onto the table, snaps it open, and produces a gold fountain pen with a flourish. You just sign these documents, and I'll get started turning you into the tragic victim. A victim. Me. I'm a villain. I made the choices that made me a villain, and to be honest, I never really regretted it until I got caught. If not for that woodsman, I'd still be out there, stalking Peter and his friends, blowing down pigs' houses, and looking for my next Little Red Riding Hood. But then, look where being the villain has gotten me. In this room, with a scumbag who wants me to lie, tell people a sob story, deny what I am just so I won't be punished for the wrong I've done, and he can make a lot of money. I think Mr. R is a worse villain than I am, and he's definitely not the kind of villain I want to be. Now let's get this straightened out, I say, the words coming out from behind bared fangs. I'm a villain. I know I'm a villain. I own that. I'd rather just accept that I've done wrong and take what I've got coming. Mr. R purses his lips like he's tasted something really sour. Mr. Wolf, please be reasonable. I think you'd better get out of here, Mr. R, before I start naming names, or I could just gobble you up. Your pick. Mr. Wolf. I lunge forward, straining the chain to its limits. Planting my forepaws on the table, I let out a savage bark, jaws snapping, spattering drool all over Mr. R's nice suit and shiny glasses. He lurches backwards, tumbling out of the chair, briefcase and pen flying across the room. A second later, he scrambles back to his feet, staring at me, eyes wide, and darts for the door. Now I smell it. The fear. Its stink is thick and rank. I guess he really isn't stupid. With one hand on the doorknob, he pauses, glancing back at me. You know they will never stop seeing you as a villain. They will hunt and persecute you, no matter what you do. Maybe so, I reply, suddenly tired of this whole thing. But maybe I've earned that. Maybe if I want that to change, I need to show them that I can change too. I shrug. So, even though I'm the villain in this story, maybe I can still do the right thing. Maybe that's the moral of the story.